Live draft coverage has returned here on the FFPC Insider Access Show live on the Better Sports Network. Hi, hello, and welcome to all of you watching tonight. Pleased to be joined by the way, my name is Eric Balkman at Eric Balkman on the X. You may know me from the HSFF Hour, Extra Reps, RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, of course, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I have to let everybody know, for the first 20 or half hour of the show tonight, roughly 27 minutes, 26 minutes, we're going to be talking fantasy football, the latest news and everything going around. And I have two of the best minds to do it from the high stakes level. We have Dave Terpoilli, the 14-time FFPC champion, joins me tonight at Dave Terp on X. You saw his coverage on the FFPC Pros versus Joes. Terp, welcome in.
Happy to be here. It's a beautiful Thursday night. We're in drafting season.
As our producer Matt Deutsch says, fantasy football night in America.
And if you didn't know already, you're going to know Jonathon Brooks is probably going to be a first-round pick by the time we draft in Vegas. You didn't hear that today. I'm just saying it's going to happen.
Yeah, Henry Muto, by the way, chiming in for our other guest tonight. Theo, all he does is live stream drafts. This is at least number 2 today.
This is number 2 today, and then I'm doing 2 FFPC live streams tomorrow. We're doing a Big Gorilla, and we're doing an FFPC main event. I had one of my daughter's friends ask me, "What do I do for a living?" I said, "At this point, I just tell people I'm a professional podcaster. It's much easier, easier than trying to explain what we actually do." Yeah.
Theo, how old's your daughter?
So I have an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 7-year-old, 2 boys and a girl. So my oldest is the girl, and then 2 boys. So life is busy. Last night I had a draft with Dan Williamson, not an FFPC draft, but another one, but I missed the first 10 rounds because of AAU basketball. But I mean, when you draft all the time, you run into some problems. So got to have good partners out there. Terp and I are doing a best ball at some point before in this month in August. We'll get that up on the schedule, but I'm doing a lot of live drafts. In addition to podcasts, so we're starting to roll out 2 shows a day. We hit 40,000 YouTube subs on RotoWire, which was huge, and bringing some really good content. People are really, really enjoying it. So I appreciate all the help from the FFPC as well.
By the way, I should mention this too. That the voice you're hearing is none other than Theo Gremminger, longtime high stakes fantasy football player. He is now, as of a couple of months ago, the lead NFL fantasy analyst for RotoWire.com. He's directing all the content there. A guy that is no stranger to high stakes drafts. And by the way, next year, when you guys do this best ball tournament together, you and Terp, Theo, we got to stream that one right on Inside.
No, next year. We'll stream one in the next couple of weeks. Yeah.
My point is, when you get next year, when we get you guys both back on this show, I want to stream a best ball tournament draft.
We'll have some fun with it.
Yeah, 100%. And Balky, you never say you give Terp the 14-time FFPC league winner. And with me, I'll take pretty much all of your industry guys that have come on the show. However many they've won collectively, I got more in my bag than they do. I'm positive on that one. But I would like somebody to at some point be whatever, how many times. Do the dynasty ones count too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, That's oh my God, it would be a sickening number out there. But yeah, man, love everything you guys do on this channel. It's really, really fun to watch, and love Terp. Love watching all you guys sort of break down these drafts. So I talked to Terp today. I might come back on in September. I'm trying to make that one happen, Terp.
Sounds good, brother.
They're every time I have a high stakes guest on, maybe not so much this show because this show is more industry people, but some of my other shows, I always go back and look, Theo, and some people I can count up how many championships that they won. Like this week, we had an 11-time champ on HSFF Hour last night in Adam Ryla. Tomorrow night on Extra Reps, we have a 17-time champ in Gary Broad, right? And so those are easier to count up. There are a few select people playing an FFPC who I don't even bother counting how many titles that they've won because it's just going to be a waste of my time. Then at that point, and you're one of them, by the way. And then at that point, I try to pick out whatever your biggest winner was, whatever your biggest championship was, and then I put that on there and slap that on the YouTube title or whatever. Because with you, I'm wasting my time trying to count how many times with the dynasty, best ball, main event, big gorilla. I mean, it's you have an incredible resume. And I'll say this too, dude. like, and maybe I shouldn't be saying this on this show, but like I subscribe. I don't know how many podcasts I subscribe to and how many shows I try to watch. But anytime in my feed, if I get a Theo Gremminger one from RotoWire or like a live stream, I usually bump it to the top because you are one of the few people out there. And since this is an FFPC centric show, you are one of the few people out there that really caters to the high stakes crowd. Like the shows I do obviously do it, but outside of that, we don't see a whole lot of it. And you do a fantastic job of it, whether you're streaming drafts or talking about things. I think this is where it's crucial, talking about things from a high stakes national tournament standpoint, which I don't think gets, I think it's still, in 2026, it's still getting short shrift in the industry.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate that. And when I started making content, I was covering high stakes and, covering you guys and your competitor. And then everybody, sort of like the disconnect in the community. I think it's like the underdog effect where all these people started putting thousands of dollars into it because they're doing all these best ball manias. And now everybody wants to find edges to win in any league. So the high stakes stuff correlates even for people that are just doing a regular sleeper league or ESPN or Yahoo league. But we've always tried to not talk down to my audience at any point. And I think like when you treat people with showing people what like the highest levels of fantasy football, what they're doing, I think that gets you more prepared for like the guys you should reach for in your home leagues and like finding those sort of edges. So it always meant so much to me to have like the high stakes people paying attention to my content. So it means like the world to me, Balky, that you're listening to all of them and all the FFPC and other high stakes format people that come and listen to my shows. Hopefully we're still helping you out a lot. But it's funny, I get all these people sort of coming on and saying, why do you always reference FFPC ADP? I don't play FFPC. I'm like, because that's the only format where you're going to get all this action in May and June. And then if you want to predict your ADP in Sleeper or ESPN or Yahoo, go to Fantasy Mojo for your draft that's like Labor Day weekend. Go to fantasymojo.com right now and look at the drafts now, because the drafters in FFPC are like 3 weeks ahead of the home leagues all the time, and the drafters in FFPC are ahead of the underdog drafters too. They're always like I mean, you tell me, Terp, we see things in FFPC drafts like 2 weeks ahead of underdog these days.
1,000%.
100%.
The adjustments have to be made, especially because with the tight end premium, you have to be able to adjust, because we see things, guys that are getting drafted a month ago, a week ago, are totally different now. I mean, I brought it up to start the show. A guy like Jonathon Brooks in the next month, who knows where he's going to go? Mm-hmm. Jonathon Brooks a month ago, or 2 months ago, 3 months ago, you got to be able to adjust. And that's the good thing about Fantasy Mojo. The good thing about the FFPC is you always have the ability to adjust. You have the ability to let somebody else go get Jonathon Brooks in the fourth round, and you pick up the value that falls to you. And that's the one 100%. Thing I think people miss. They just think, oh, my God, I don't have Jonathon Brooks. I got to go get him now. Well, you have to look at the overall picture before you do that. If you're doing one team or two teams, you do whatever you want. But if you're more volume starting later, you just got to see what happened a month ago and try to adjust. It's just like the market. You're just trying to make adjustments and do the best thing that's going to be for your chance at $1 million.
Coming up on the show tonight, I should mention that at the bottom of the hour, so coming up at 7:30, that's when Theo's draft is going to start. He's drafting from the one spot tonight, so we'll see what he does there in his quest to win $400,000 in the FFPC Best Ball Tournament this year. $100K more than last year. We added $100,000 to the grand prize. I know I've been going back and forth with former FFPC Best Ball Tournament winner Beretta James on X. And I want to make this clear. We did not just take $100,000 away from the prize pool and redistribute it to first place. We added well more than $100,000 onto the prize pool this year. It's paying deeper. This is a much more lucrative contest to be in than it was a year ago. MyFFPC.com is where to go. $125 gets you in the door, and you can take a shot at competing against guys like Theo Gremminger, against Dave Terpoilli, to try to win this $400K this year. So very exciting stuff. Theo, I know as long as we're talking about Jonathon Brooks here to lead things off, let me get your thoughts on it right now. So we get the report earlier today that Hubbard is not day to day, but Chuba Hubbard is week to week, according to head coach Dave Canales in Carolina, with a hamstring strain. And it sounds like the only Carolina running back that we're going to care about, at least at the top of the draft, for the remainder of training camp and the preseason is going to be one Jonathon Brooks. I know you were high on him before. How high do you get on this guy now, knowing that we're not going to see Hubbard maybe until September. This is huge for Brooks, and how we handle this in high stakes drafts is going to be crucial on how people are winning, these $1 million grand prizes in the FFPC.
So over at RotoWire.com, I did my FFPC main event and Big Gorilla targets list, where we listed guys I liked in each round, either as a priority target or a target, and a little bit of a write-up. And Jonathon Brooks was there for like a 6th, 7th round value. I'm going to have to rewrite the article because that's gone. I was in a draft earlier today, and he went 502. He went ahead of Travis Etienne. He went ahead of TreVeyon Henderson, ahead of Bashal Tutin. And I think you're going to start seeing some really sharp money. Terp, we see it all the time where, there's a known drafter who starts really drafting Jonathon Brooks. Well, there's a couple of like very highly known drafters with a lot of skin in the game who are very into him. There's a lot of people in the industry who are also sharp that are into him. And I think it's a really easy bet because it's his pass catching work. He's going to provide a well-rounded skill set where if he's on the field a high number of snaps, he's going to catch enough passes that even if he's not explosive as a runner, he still could pay off at cost. And we've got the Dave Canales running back whisperer narrative where it's every year we get a running back playing for Dave Canales who out-hits their ADP. I mean, every single year like clockwork. Last year with Rico Dowdle, those winning weeks he provided, if you were a best ball manager, he was a massive edge pick for you. If you picked him up off the waiver wire, I mean, he was a waiver wire pickup in some of these main event leagues, was an absolute smash value. Chuba Hubbard before that, where Chuba had his huge year under Canales when Canales' first year there, where Chuba finished as like the RB15, and then you go back to Tampa Bay, that legendary Rachaad White season where we were getting him in like the 6th or the 7th round, and he ended up finishing as like a top 6 running back in PPR scoring. So a lot is going for Brooks. And if he's back to being as explosive as he was at Texas, you're talking about potential for even more. So I think he could be a 15 point per game scorer at the running back position if things sort of like fall his way. And right now they're really falling his way with this Chuba Hubbard missing time. And I think the drumbeats were already there. He flipped Chuba Hubbard in FFPC ADP like 2 months ago, and he actually just flipped him on underdog even before the injury. So not a whole lot to dislike about this situation, except if you're like the pessimistic drafter or the wait and see at first drafter. I think if you're drafting enough teams, you want to have some exposure to Jonathon Brooks.
When you look at this Terp, and I know you were posting on X about this earlier today, how high is too high for Jonathon Brooks at this point for you?
I mean, I'm a volume drafter just like Theo and a lot of other people that we know that are very high on Jonathon Brooks. Will I take Jonathon Brooks in the 4th round in the next couple weeks? Probably not. When I start drafting a lot of mains at the end of the month, that could change. Everything will be about structure, obviously where he falls compared to where I'm picking and all that stuff. I love Jonathon Brooks. I have a ton of Jonathon Brooks everywhere I'm drafting. He is one of my highest earned running backs. The news today is obviously great because I know me and Theo are in the same boat. The discount's gone. The 6th round, 7th round that was still higher than where it was a month ago or 2 months ago, it's gone. That stuff's over. So you have to adjust to really, look at all. Look, does Jonathon Brooks pay off? You look at it from the other side, the pessimistic side, the wait and see side. You might not get a bet. You might have a 2-day window. I believe they play Saturday. Jonathon Brooks is going to get work. If Jonathon Brooks does anything special in that game, who the freak knows where he's going to be drafted? Because people are going to get so excited about Jonathon Brooks and all the steam and all the hype, and Twitter is going to blow him up. We see it every year. I'm not saying it's not going to work out because I want it to work out just as much as anybody, but will the steam get too high? I don't think so. When you're drafted a mains, get your guy. If you're a Jonathon Brooks guy like myself, I'm going to take him somewhere. If I have to go take him a little higher, who cares? At the end of the day, you feel your structures are different, your team's different, guys are going to fall, things are going to happen in the next month or so that are going to change everything. This week's been wild with Malik Neighbors, with Jonathon Brooks. We can keep going of some of the guys that have been banged up. Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith. We can go to a list of guys who are falling down draft boards, people that don't even want to be drafted right now. We talked about Travis Etienne. People avoid him like the plague right now. Breece Hall seems like a guy that people just don't want to draft. You're going to see all this stuff move around, and teams are going to get so different. So as you're drafting later in your gorillas or mains, if you have 1 team, 2 teams, and you love Jonathon Brooks, go get him because somebody else is going to be more aggressive with it if it's not you. So to me, fourth round's probably where like I don't know if he gets like higher than that, but like if he breaks an 80-yard touchdown on Saturday, I mean, who knows? Who knows how high he could go? And Hubbard, we still have a month out, and the coaching staff obviously still likes him. They kept him around, so like it's still going to be annoying enough. And we, at the end of the day, we don't know anything about Brooks yet. He hasn't really played, any sort of like meaningful football. So you have your temper your expectations just a little bit, but it's hard not to be excited about everything Brooks right now. Like I said, people, the wait and see people, you're going to be in trouble if Jonathon Brooks goes off on, just has a 40 yards and on 8 carries. That's going to move him up, and that's going to get into like uncomfortable territory.
It could be uncomfortable. You could temper your expectations, or Terp, you can just let your imagination go wild. And
that's exactly why people win $1 million.
Right.
You look at some of these teams that win $1 million every year. They're not always the sexiest draft. There's always some one or two guys that they picked out of nowhere, or they moved up and they got a little crazy with it and they got their guy, and then now they're cashing checks. You see it every year. Every year we're like, oh, this draft's awesome. I'm going to win everything. And usually that draft doesn't do anything. And it's the teams that look uncomfortable, the teams that look weird are the ones that, that skyrocket up the rankings. So with Jonathon Brooks, it's wheels up. I mean, it's really hard not to love the situation right now. Like, obviously you want the guy to be healthy and you want the guy to be on the field, but if he does anything in the preseason, he's probably, first of all, not going to play the rest of the preseason. And number two, all these sharp people that we know they're on Brooks are just going to keep moving him up and up and up and up. And, you're going to have to either bite the bullet or you're going to have to just hope you don't get burned.
Guys, I just looked at the big gorilla that went off the board today with the FFPC at 4 p.m. This was after the Brooks news broke. He did not go as high as he did in your draft, Theo, earlier. He did, however, go today at the 605 as running back 27. And Chuba Hubbard fell all the way to the 8th round. I think it was, 806 as running back 35. And Adam Hahn pointing out that he's already seen Jonathon Brooks go 40th overall in a draft in the big gorilla way back at the end of July too. So there have been these Brooks truthers, these Brooks fans out there. And I think we're going to see more of them over the next few weeks, especially to see what he does in the preseason. As Terp mentioned, if this guy goes off and busts a big one, oh my God, we're not prepared for what this is going to do to high stakes.
Twitter will literally blow Twitter, whatever you call it these days, will literally set on fire. Jonathon Brooks scores a touchdown, like a 30-yard run or something. The app shut down, what was it, 2 years ago, a year ago for a while, and everybody was losing their mind. If Jonathon Brooks does that, it might shut down again.
The possibilities are endless. I don't want to turn this into a Jonathon Brooks show. But I have a feeling once this draft starts in about 10 minutes, it might turn into be that. Theo, I want to go back to you and talk about another running back situation that I think is worth talking about, and that's Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson and Raheem Sanders in Cleveland right now. The Browns running back coach, Deuce Staley, said he thinks Judkins can play on all 3 downs this year. Now, for those of us Hard Knocks fans, I remember Deuce Staley talking in a lot of hyperbolic terms when he was featured on the Lions Hard Knocks season a couple of years ago. So I don't put a whole lot of stock into this. But Scott Petrak for BrownsZone.com also reported that Judkins is expected to have a bigger role in the passing game this year. And I think one of the things that had me at least prevented me from drafting Judkins was I was worried about what Dylan Sampson was going to do on 3rd downs as far as the draft capital that you had to pay to get Judkins on your team. I didn't know if the juice was worth the squeeze at this point. But now, Theo, it almost seems like the conversation is not how much is Sampson going to take away from Judkins. Is Sampson even the number 2 running back in Cleveland, which is another whole thing to unpack. I think by and large, if we're talking about Sampson versus Sanders, these are all good things for one Quinshon Judkins at the moment.
Yeah, I've been big on Quinshon Judkins. I took him today in a 6th round in a different format, and I'm just very bullish on the talent profile that we saw coming out of Ole Miss and then later Ohio State, and then what he was able to do last year with no ramp up, literally no preseason. They sort of dropped him on the field and had him in a high volume role as soon as he was available. We obviously have some limitations by the quarterback play in Cleveland, but Judkins feels like a player that could really, really beat his ADP. And I'm willing to take shots. I feel like I'm a sucker for a lot of these Cleveland Browns right now. I'm interested in Harold Fannin. Interested in Casey Conceipcion, and then interested in Denzel Boston, especially in like a best ball format like this one in like the 15th round. I took Denzel Boston in the pros versus Joes as well. But Judkins, I do Staley said it multiple times. We also had some positive coach speak from Todd Monken, and it feels like this is going to be the offensive focal point, and I think he's going to have an extremely high volume role. Does he get enough touchdown opportunity to pay off big at ADP? But I feel like he's being sort of drafted at his floor right now. And the Cleveland offensive line, we have them ranked very low on RotoWire, and I know that Establish the Run does as well, but they've put a lot into it. They feel like an offensive line that could improve a lot, but it's all theoretical. But when you look at what they did in free agency and in the NFL draft, they invested heavily in the offensive line. So for me, Judkins is just sort of a bell cow profile, a bell cow role, and a bet on talent for me, despite sort of the bad circumstances. You can't have too many bad offense guys in your builds. I don't think you're going to love your build if you walk out with a bunch of potential top like bottom 5 scoring offense guys. But for me, Judkins is one that I'm very open-minded to drafting, and it just feels like a player that can take a big step forward this year.
Judkins is playing behind an offensive line that I know who was just commenting. Go
Henry
Jim.
Henry Muto said that the 5 new starters. But hey, Henry, it had to be better than last year.
Well, and the other thing too is like we have seen units gel together. Like I always said for the longest time, Theo, I'm more interested in having 5 really good guys, like a unit of 5 really good guys, than 5 separate good guys. Now we don't know what Cleveland. And you alluded to this. We don't know what Cleveland has. We know that they've addressed the offensive line both in free agency and in the NFL draft. How well are those guys going to come together? We don't know yet. But if they do, they certainly have the talent to come together and create something very significant for Judkins and the Browns this year, for sure. Okay, Terp, Theo, I'll throw this back to you because I know you have some thoughts on this. Sean Payton said earlier this week that Pat Bryant is going to have a role in the offense. This was in the Mile High Huddle report from Zack Kelberman. I want to know what you think about Pat Bryant. Juice worth the squeeze where he's going in the big gorilla right now, or are you moving on to a different sort of like late round wide receiver stab? Before you answer that, I'll just tell you right now, over the last 2 days in the FFPC big gorilla where people are drafting for $1 million there, and taking advantage of the 7 bananas promo, obviously deep payouts there, 800 people getting paid in the championship round. Runner up is getting 6 figures as well. Pat Bryant in that format over the last 2 days, as I'm trying to find it, wide receiver 75 at the 1708. He's basically free, Terp, but how high based on this report and some other reports that we've been coming out from the coaches praising Pat Bryant, how high would you be taking him right now? Certainly got to be higher than the 17th.
It's hard to really judge that because, like, it's a lot of coach speak, obviously, but they have a lot of guys. Like, obviously, Jalen Waddle, they gave all that capital. He's a little banged up, but he should be fine. Unless Courtland Sutton finds a way to get moved, which I don't think is happening. They still got Marvin Mims. They still got Troy Franklin. Evan Ingram's still, annoying. In a best ball type of format, yes, Pat Bryant makes some sense where he's being drafted because he's going to probably have some spike weeks if everything goes perfect. But in a redraft, a gorilla, a main event type of situation, it's just really hard to click that button. I'd rather click somebody with a little more upside than that. And I'm not saying Pat Bryant's a scrub, but like, how are you ever clicking that button if somebody doesn't get hurt? It's just a really, really tough click. So to me, like I'd rather take shots on like one of the Miami receivers or somebody like that, like, you don't know anything about, nobody really knows anything about, but they could be the guy. Pat Bryant, I don't see a world where he's ever going to be the guy. There's just, and Sean Payton, we didn't even mention him. He's just an annoyance for fantasy people, for fantasy players. We don't know who's playing running back. Obviously, Bo Nix coming off a major injury. We're not 100% sure he's good to go. And then the receiver room, they trade all that capital for Jalen Waddle. They got a lot of guys. So to me, Pat Bryant, let somebody else take him. By the time he might turn into something, he's probably not going to be on your roster.
Theo, do you view Pat Bryant as a roster clogger? Is the contingent upside there with a potential Sutton or Waddle injury worth keeping him around on your teams at the high stakes level just to see what happens?
I think Terp makes a really, really good argument there, but it's where do they view Sutton? Is Sutton starting to get a little bit cooked? We saw them trying to use Troy Franklin in like a featured role last year, and then Pat Bryant, they had like a lot of positivity with. I do think, Terp, you make a good argument that there's a chance that you draft him. Let's say he settles in like round 14, round 15 by the time we get to Vegas. He gets in that range. Then maybe week 1 and week 2, the usage is not that great. Then they start ramping him up even more in like week 6, and you've got to pick him back up. I could see him being like a musical chairs back of the roster guy. But I do think by the time we get to the second half of the season, there's a chance that he overtakes Courtland Sutton as the number 2 receiver on this team. And you look at sort of the limitations with Evan Engram, where last year he was really, really kind of disappointing. He seems like a guy who's kind of cooked. Really not even really a guy you want to consider drafting except in the last round of best balls. Nope. So I think there's an opportunity for another receiver opposite Jalen Waddle besides Courtland Sutton to take on a role. Pat Bryant was a 3rd-round pick. He was a Senior Bowl participant. He flashed at times last year. So I'm open-minded to him. But again, a lot of those guys are kind of annoying to draft bulky, where a lot of them end up on the waiver wire. That's why Terp said it the best. Go get your guys in the second half of the drafts. When you get to like round 13 on, if you can draft a guy that's on your roster by the time you get to the FFPC playoffs that you actually drafted inside of like 13, 14, 15, 16, then you've hit. Those guys have such a high turnover. So betting on sort of unknown upside, betting on like year 2 talents, I'm willing to do it. But hey man, I'm also into like Adonai Mitchell and a couple other guys in that range. So it's tough. They're not all going to hit. There's a bunch of guys we like in that range, though.
And there's also going to be a time where you get a little too uncomfortable, or you need a roster spot and you cut them too early. It happens. We see it every year. Obviously you're keeping different positions and you're trying to build your roster correctly. Pat Bryant, like Theo said, what if he doesn't do anything for 3 weeks? Mm-hmm. You're probably not keeping him on your team. You're probably, if he has 5 catches for 30 yards in 3 weeks, he's probably getting cut. Most people can't just store somebody that has never proven it on your bench. Even the unknown upside's there. So unless somebody gets hurt, it's not a bad click. It's just I would take other clicks over him. Like Adam put in the chat, Caleb Douglas. Does anybody know anything about Caleb Douglas?
Starting.
Not really. But could Caleb Douglas be the number 1 receiver in Miami? It's in the range of possibilities. And then if you draft a guy like that, we look at it a couple years ago, Puka. The Puka drafters, where they got him, even as long as we drafted in Vegas, and we were sitting there live and playing in Hollywood, their advantage over everybody else is so massive because most of the time you're drafting, let's just call it what it is, handcuffs and dead weight at the end of your draft in some regards. Kickers, defenses, backup quarterbacks. Like you're hoping somebody gets hurt or something like that pops.
Getting the ambiguous wide receiver 1s. Those guys have some value, Terp. I mean, a couple times we've seen that hit. Maybe the upside for Caleb Douglas might be, wide receiver 36, but it'll be a massive hit if he's Miami's interesting right now because all those guys are basically free. Douglas and Washington are moving up a little bit, but neither one's going higher than like round 15 in FFPC, and one is probably the best bet. Unless you think Jalen Tolbert has another level that we somehow haven't seen, then the best bet is Douglas or Malik Washington, for somebody besides Achane catching passes. I mean, Dulcich has a whole hive, but he's a sort of another story with the tight end premium. Yeah.
I will say this. We've talked about a lot of players here so far. I'm willing to bet that at least 1, maybe 2 of these players are going to end up on Theo Gremminger's 400K FFPC Best Ball Tournament team that he is about to draft right now. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll find out what Theo is doing with the 101 pick as he shoots for $400,000. Dave Terpoilli, Theo Gremminger from RotoWire. I'm Eric Balkman. You're watching FFPC Insider Access live on the Better Sports Network. Don't go anywhere.
What's up, everyone? Andrew Cooper here of Fantasy Alarm, and I want to talk to you about my very favorite format ever, and that's best ball. Yes, we all love to draft. Drafting is the best part of fantasy football, but if you do too many drafts in too many real leagues, you end up with too many lineups, too many trades, too many waivers. It's a lot of work. There's a solution to that, and it's called best ball. You go in, you draft your team, and then you're done. You don't need to set a lineup, no trades. The algorithm optimizes your lineup for you every single week, so you can draft as many teams as you want. And the best place to play right now is myffpc.com, where they have the $125 buy-in with a $400,000 prize, and also a $35 buy-in super flex league with a $400,000 prize. Get in over at myffpc.com. use promo code ALARM when you deposit for the first time. They'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more, and you can start drafting teams now and draft all summer long without having to worry about lineups or trades or any of that. Get in there at myffpc.com and start drafting best ball teams now through the rest of the summer.
FFPC Insider Access rolls on here. Live coverage of the FFPC Best Ball Tournament Draft featuring Theo Gremminger from RotoWire.com, drafting from the one spot. Also going to get commentary here, at least for the next half hour, from Dave Terpoilli, the 14-time FFPC League champ. Matt Deutsch is our producer. Matt, I am trying to share my screen right now, but I'm having some problems doing it. I don't know if you can throw up that draft board so we can see exactly what the operation looks like with Theo's team right now. Nope, do we have it? We might have it. There we go. Boom. Okay, perfect. And we can scroll down on that, Matt, so we can see the whole thing if possible. I guess it doesn't really matter right now. We're in the first round. So we have you, Theo. We'll just talk about your first round pick. The debate has been for quite a while. Theo, Jahmyr Gibbs or Bijan Robinson. For you, it's clearly Gibbs tonight. And I feel like, Theo, it's been Gibbs for a while for you.
Yeah, I've been Gibbs for a while. I love Bijan Robinson. I mean, I think he could definitely burn us this year and be the RB1 overall. But Gibbs, you get access to such a high quality offense in Detroit. We don't have any question marks about the quarterback position. Bijan could get us on like a 1,000 receiving yard season though this year. He could be a 1,000 guy. But Gibbs would be my bet. If one of them is going to put up a 2019 Christian McCaffrey like points per game average, for me, it's Gibbs. The quality of the offense is there. But again, Bijan's fine as well. And I love Jamar Chase. I love being in the top 3 this year.
Terp, what do you make of that selection at 4 tonight? And I want to see, because there are some familiar faces in here. Tom Murphy ends up going with McCaffrey over Nakua, who Corey Heath takes at 5 tonight. Terp, what do you make of that McCaffrey pick when you consider the Nakua news about him potentially being suspended? We found out he ran through a glass door, which was very interesting.
What is that? What is that, Terp?
I don't. It's wild. It's so we see McCaffrey over Nakua. I'm not a strong enough man to do it. Would you be able to take CMC over Puka?
I'm on Nakua over CMC still, despite Nakua being a maniac. I've had some people make arguments that you should move Amon-Ra St. Brown or JSN ahead of him. I think some people in the industry that are pretty smart are doing that. I think they're worried about the suspension more so than the running into glass doors at parties. But Adam Schefter talked about the beginning. It's not a great thing. You never hear about Jamar Chase running into a glass window or anything like that.
No. At the end of the day, Brock Bowers should be up there, in my opinion. He's a guy that if, I'm on the clock, I'm definitely going to consider. I'm still taking Puka, but I think it's close. I mean, there's a couple other guys at the bottom that, in certain situations I might move up. I'm on James Cook. I'm on Ashton Genty. I'd move them up. Obviously, St. Brown are guys that I would consider. But at the end of the day, I'm probably still going to take Puka. I don't think I just saw something about 48 games. I don't think that's in the range of possibilities. I think if anything, it's a 1-2 game. Obviously, he's in the game to open the season. I just can't see a world where he's suspended for that. He's obviously the Rams are the marquee team this year. With Puka, I don't think it's going to be anything. Hopefully, he gets his head on straight and stops acting up. But from a fantasy perspective, I mean, there's a world you can tell yourself where he's a wide receiver 1.
Theo, you are on the clock here in the second round. You get back-to-back picks. You've already had Gibbs. Now you have the opportunity to add on to that. A lot of different ways to go. You go with Malik Neighbors here. We'll talk about that pick in a second here. But now running back and receiver are on your squad. You are up next here at the 301. A lot of different ways. Running back, receiver. I don't know about a tight end here, but I'll give you the floor. Take us through your thought process at the 301.
Yeah, tight end would be interesting. I think Tyler Warren is a viable pick here if you want to pull up a tight end. And I think running back wise, structurally, Breece Hall or Jeremiah Love would be a very helpful pick. But I'm gonna do what I think Terp would do here. I'm going to pass on Nico Collins, and I'm going to go with George Pickens and get access to a really high ceiling player here that I can also give me possible correlation with Dak Prescott later on and an offense that's really easy to bet on. So I love this start. I wonder how common it is. I have Fantasy Mojo open, and every time I do these things, I'm like a Darren Armani hype man when I'm on this show, but I have Fantasy Mojo on here. I think you could do a lot of different things. I think you start getting into, being too common. People get into that, like in these best ball tournaments, is, should you eat the chalk? Can you be sort of uncommon from the 2-3 turn? You can get way different later in the draft and sort of make your team different than a lot of the 101 teams with Gibbs. But I think I'm already pretty different with the Neighbors, Pickens, Gibbs. Mm-hmm. I wonder how many stacks there is with that 3-player set.
I think so the Neighbors thing I have to ask you about here. We saw that, was it today he skipped practice or missed practice yesterday or whatever, and he had been kind of crawling up, like doing like I don't know if it was Renan or whoever reported that he only missed one practice since the start of training camp, which is obviously awesome. This thing about him working off to the side, working with trainers, this is not something that's sounding off alarms for you at all, Theo.
No, I mean, you could play it safe here. I mean, certainly there's always a lot of risk for re-aggravation when it comes to guys like Malik Neighbors. But you have a lot of risk at the wide receiver position in general right now. Are we avoiding Emeka Egbuka with the toe? Are we avoiding Luther Burden right now? I mean, there's a lot of players that we could play it really safe for, but this is a tournament. This is not a closed 12-man league. And I think we got to play things like we got to draft like we're correct. And I don't think I'm going to have an opportunity to get a Gibbs Neighbors combination. I mean, in 10 days, could probably be an impossible combination to put together the way Neighbors is sort of trending up ADP wise.
Terp, what do you make of the Pickens pick at the 301 here tonight? 10th receiver off the board, giving Theo 2 top 10 receivers within the first 25 picks of the draft. There has been talk about from some people saying that Pickens is actually going to outperform CeeDee Lamb this year, who obviously went a full round plus ahead of Pickens tonight. I don't know if I subscribe to that theory, but certainly I exist in a world where that is part of the realm of possibilities. How high are you on Pickens this year, Terp?
I wouldn't say super high. I would have done the same thing Theo did to start off. The only thing that recently, I've been watching a lot of Theo's content. He had Matt Harmon on, and he talked about Nico Collins and made a bullish case for Nico Collins. And I really listened to what he said, and I was not really on Nico Collins. Nico Collins is the guy that I'm adding a little bit more because we have seen that with Nico Collins, and we have seen that ability and the spike weeks and stuff like that. He's not a guy that I was targeting a ton early, but I've mixed in some Nico Collins because he's starting to fall down draft boards. Something about this third round that I know Theo's noticed, and I'm sure you have noticed at Balky, you do this all the time. None of these guys are like really set, like secure. Like look at George Pickens, he got CeeDee Lamb. Nico Collins, like CJ Stroud, is he any good? They got a lot of guys there. Jeremiah Love, all the questions in Arizona right now. Tyler Warren, like is Daniel Jones back? Who's playing on the outside? Rice, banged up. I mean, is he in jail? Is his head right? Like, doesn't look great in camp. Kyron Williams, everybody's hyping up Blake Corum again. Nobody wants to draft Breece Hall. Javonte Williams was last year a fluke. Olave, obviously Jordan Tyson until today was getting a lot of hype. Zay Flowers banged up, and is he just kind of like will Declan? Will the new OC actually get him the ball as much as he says he's going to? Devonta Smith hamstring. We can keep going down. All these guys, like, there's not really any guy that you can say is secure. Tyler Warren might be the most secure just for the format. So when you're looking through all these guys, like Theo said perfectly, you're playing in a tournament. If this is a confined league, a 12-man league, it's totally different thinking. You have to understand that. George Pickens has that massive, massive ceiling. With, in some cases, CeeDee Lamb, but without, you could say George Pickens would be up there in the St. Brown JSN category without CeeDee Lamb on this team, on this offense. So to me, it's a great pick. It's a pick you got to make in this format. If you're trying to win, you want that spike week at the end, go for it.
We do see a big drop-off in receiver here, too. Right after Theo took Pickens, Nico Collins goes off the board, and then we don't see another receiver being drafted until the 309 with Chris Olave, a little bit of a receiver run here with Flowers. And I have to mention Emeka Egbuka, since I am talking to the president of his fan club, Emeka Egbuka, Theo, as you have doled him out and named him so far this season. Are you still nervous about the toe? I don't know if they've gotten the imaging results back yet, but a little bit of a scary yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, it was a really, really scary time. And it's still a little bit of scariness. I have to update my ranking. Well, I don't have to, but I'm going to update my rankings at RotoWire probably by the weekend. And I'm gonna drop Egbuka just to like 1 or 2 spots, maybe 3 or 4 spots when it's all said and done. I don't want to be pessimistic about him, but you also have to be realistic where we were taking him ahead of a number of high upside wide receivers. Now the toe sort of lingering. I'm still very, very much in on Egbuka. He's one of my guys. I mean, Terp, it's nice being able to see him at like the 3-4 turn level and not have to take him at like the 302. I guess it makes the back end of the third round a little more of an upside swing there. But I think I really, really am hopeful, not just for the bags that I have packed on Egbuka, and I took him in a main event. I think that was at the 308 with Dan Williamson. Actually, that might have been a different one. They're all kind of blending together. But I have Egbuka in so many drafts right now that it would obviously hurt me if he misses some time. You worry about the toe sort of lingering. That's the problem with toe injuries. Guys play through them, but then they can re-aggravate and all that sort of thing. But at this point, I'm kind of treating him as is, and I'll take the discount. But yes, I am dropping him in my rankings, but very, very small. And I podcast with Nelson Sousa today. I know a lot of people here follow his content as well. He sort of said the same thing. It's just a slight correction on Egbuka for both of us.
And the good thing about that is, like, now at Drafts, we keep talking about how things change. Egbuka, Jalen Wild, 2 guys I'll just mention, were moving up the rankings. They were up there, and Egbuka, was getting up in that close to that second round in some drafts. Waddle was moving in the middle of the third round in some drafts. Now they're coming back down to where they kind of were, and maybe a little, better to where you can. Team 11 could have got both. Mm-hmm. 2 weeks ago, a week ago, you weren't getting both. You were lucky if you got one. Down here, you didn't have a chance to take one in the third round. So that's why it's always good to, like, if you have the ability, mix in drafts, mix in different times, because so many things are going to change. And guess what? Next week, it's going to be totally different. The week after that, it's going to be totally different. You just want to make sure that you're adjusting the right way, because if Jalen Wild gets back in practices, he's going to start moving back up. Egbuka is, in my opinion, going to stay where he's at because he's probably not going to play in the preseason. There's no real reason for him to get out there. Get him healthy, get him ready for week 1. He's the alpha, or it seems like he's going to be the alpha. So if you're drafting at the end of FFPC drafts, you could be getting them both, and you can stacking with the 2 running backs to start off in some regards, and then getting those 2 guys. There's some fun builds that you can make at the end of drafts right now, and if you're drafting in the next couple days or so.
Theo, I know you're coming up on you're halfway to your 4th and 5th round picks here. I want to go back to the 2nd round here. Omarion Hampton goes off the board. That was team number 6 who drafted him. Brian Lewis ends up grabbing Hampton there, ends Hampton's slide. We saw Hampton in a main event last night fall all the way to the 212. And obviously, I think a lot of this is predicated on what Mike McDaniel said about wanting to use all 3 of the guys in the Chargers backfield, Hampton, Mitchell, and Vidal. Your thoughts on if Hampton would have made it to you at the end of the 2nd, would you have drafted him there, and how are you sort of handling him in high-stakes leagues right now?
I would have taken him all day at the 2-3 turn. I think if one of those running backs is going to have an awesome season, it's easily Omarion Hampton. When we've heard Mike McDaniel say things in the past, say really nice things in the past about Jalen Wright, we heard him say some interesting things about Ollie Gordon. And I think at the end of the day, if we're betting on this offense to score a lot of points, then Omarion Hampton is the guy who scores the touchdowns. I do worry a little bit that Harbaugh likes Kamani Vidal, and he'd mix him in a little bit as a pass catcher, but we know that Mike McDaniel offenses are so productive, and it's a team that we also think is going to win a ton of games. I think the game flow is going to be there for Hampton. So maybe you don't want to take Hampton at like the 202. It shouldn't make you out at the 212, the 301. It's hard to find that sort of upside bet in that range.
Hampton is a player that I'm still I'm kind of with Theo on this, Terp. I don't put a whole lot of stock into what Mike McDaniel said. I was talking with Howard Bender on the Fantasy Alarm Sirius XM show the other day, and I said McDaniel's a needler. He knew this is a fantasy question, and he did this to needle fantasy owners. So I don't put a whole lot of stock into it as Theo's on deck. Terp, your thoughts on Hampton right now? Are you going to echo what Theo just said?
I like Hampton where he's starting to fall in the last couple of days. I don't like Hampton where he was getting drafted at the 1-2 turn. It's not He's a guy that, compared to some of the other guys that are being drafted there, I'm out on. I'm a Keaton Mitchell guy. I think he's just going to be annoying enough. And then Vidal, who seems like they put it all together. That's a committee. I'm not the biggest Omarion Hampton fan. I wasn't the biggest Omarion Hampton fan coming out of college. I don't see the high upside potential that everybody else sees. I would draft Derrick Henry over him. I know that's crazy. I've never been a Derrick Henry guy. Not we'll say in the last couple of years. New offense, touchdown ability, really good team. And if they start figuring out a way to get him some touches in the passing game, which is the talk, I think Derrick Henry's a guy that's being ignored totally. Hampton's starting to fall. So if he falls, building different rosters, I can still see the path. But he's not going to be a guy that I'm going to target a ton. I just like pretty much every other running back over him.
Theo, you have made your selection in the 4th round. It is Tetairoa McMillan. Take us through the thought process here at the 501 and what you're going to do.
Yeah, so I'm open-minded to taking a running back here. Etienne's the highest drafted guy. I think of him as sort of structural. Judkins I've been taking in redraft. I think I'm going to go with David Montgomery here, a player who I don't really like paying the 501 for him, but I think he's going to be very helpful in this format, and I think he's going to get a bell cow role. So I think I'm Judkins ahead of him in a lot of drafts and open-minded Etienne, but I'm going to go with David Montgomery. I think Etienne has the best offensive situation there, but I'm in on David Montgomery. I think he's a fine pick here.
I love the start. You have the 2 running backs, the 3 receivers here. You explained the Montgomery pick. I'm with you on that. McMillan is a guy I have not drafted a whole lot this year, Theo. And it's not because of the type of player that he is. I know he's a baller. I know he's a stud. My concern is how much better is he going to get in year 2 with this offense, with Bryce Young, running things there. I think that's what's held me back, but maybe I should be looking at this more from a ceiling standpoint with McMillan. You take him as your 3rd wide receiver as a 4th round pick. You're a top 50 player. You obviously are very bullish on this guy in 2026.
I mean, I think McMillan might be an easier player to take on in best ball, even though it's like a really, really high cost here. We saw a lot of spike weeks last year, and it's interesting when you look at McMillan, there's a lot of people like sort of full on fading him because they're afraid of Bryce Young. But if we look at sort of what he was able to accomplish last year, 70 catches, 1,000 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns, if he can just sort of emulate that, I think he sort of pays off at his current cost. But I think there's a chance he takes a big step forward. Top 10 draft capital. We compared him to Drake London sort of coming out. But for me, it's just another wide receiver 1 and sort of chasing the unknown upside. I know there's a number of older wide receivers that we could see they're going to see start going here that are also would have been interesting. I think McLaurin would have been an interesting pick. Devontae Adams, Jameson Williams, some of those high upside guys. But ultimately, McMillan. I think I also could have gone running back here and not hated it. I agree with Adam in the chat that I think Woody Marks is going to be a little something in Houston, but I do think he's the change of pace guy. I think David Montgomery is going to get the goal line work. I think he's going to get the majority of the carries, and he's not going to be a zero in terms of pass catching. I think he can be an opportunistic pass catcher. So I don't love the run out here. I would have much rather have like a Garrett Wilson falling to me there. But I think I did okay with the 4-5 turn there, and we'll look to kind of get it at the 6-7 turn as well.
The main event is not what we're covering tonight, but it is something in the FFPC that both Theo and Dave are participating in, and you can compete against them as well for $1 million. It's going to pay, the championship round will pay 200 places deep. $200,000 was what the runner-up is going to get, and with every additional team you get after your first one, you're going to get $600 off. MyFFPC.com is where to go to play for $1 million on a single team with the FFPC main event this year. Terp, this is best ball. I'll bring it back here and ask you what you think about TreVeyon Henderson, the selection that it was part of. I think Theo, I don't want to say he started a run here, but 5 straight running backs go with Theo leading the way with that Montgomery pick at the 501. But you look at TreVeyon Henderson with Tom Murphy taking him there ahead of Ramondre Stevenson. We know the first unofficial depth chart is out, and Stevenson is ahead of Henderson on that. Is the best ball format, the best ball tournament that Theo's drafting in tonight, is that enough for you to say, you know what, I would take Henderson over Stevenson? Or do you think FFPC drafters are still being a little bit too bullish on the sophomore running back from Ohio State?
Just a little bit too bullish. I love TreVeyon Henderson. I love TreVeyon Henderson last year. I have a ton of TreVeyon Henderson this year. But when you just start looking at like everything New England, they just love Ramondre Stevenson, and he's not going anywhere. And it's just frustrating for, to spend the capital that we're all spending. I've drafted TreVeyon Henderson plenty of times in the last week, month, in the 5th round, and I'm still happy about it. I still have that hope, because at the end of the day, TreVeyon Henderson is one guy that could be the $400,000 pick, because he has that upside that can get up there with a conversation with a McCaffrey, Robinson, Gibbs. Not saying he's in that category, not saying he's ever anywhere close to that player, but we've seen them flashes last year that when he did have that job, that the explosion, the talent, everything is there. The question comes back to, will Mike Vrabel trust him? Can he pass block? Is vision a question like some people are saying? Ramondre Stevenson's still there. Is AJ Brown going to get a lot more work? Obviously, you should. So that their questions come in with TreVeyon Henderson, and you look at some of the guys he's been. This 5th round is, all these guys have questions. These first 5, 6 guys, like, it's hard to really love one of them. You like them, but you can't really say you love them, because they all have something that's pulling you back. And TreVeyon Henderson, in my opinion, is the best of the bunch, but he also could really, really hurt you if Stevenson either doesn't start fumbling or doesn't get hurt, because I just don't see Stevenson going anywhere. No matter what anybody tries to tell you, we all try to talk ourselves into it, but I don't know if it's going to happen. It's starting to, as we get closer to the big main events and the bigger type of, high stakes leagues, it's starting to get just a little bit more difficult to click Henderson in the 5th round.
We'll see what happens here. And by the way, Joe King called it. He said Jonathon Brooks should go at this turn, and he does, as the 27th running back off the board, the first running back selected tonight from Strider Robbins, Team Fire from the 12th spot. By the way, Strider has had a lot of success in this tournament over the years as well. He takes Brooks there. Jefferson, Lamb, Devonta Smith, Allen, Fannin, and Brooks. Theo, I know you're on the other end of this draft tonight, but what do you make about Robbins' team there from the 12 with that lineup that he's formed in the first 6 picks?
I mean, I like what he did starting out with those 3 wide receivers. I think it was really good value on Devonta Smith. Josh Allen, obviously, we don't need to say anything about him. I like the Harold Fannin Jr. at the 512. We start to see him go at like the 501 a lot more in some of these big gorillas and main events. And then obviously I like the Brooks pick. So I think Team 12 is very much live right now after a 3 wide receiver start. That's sort of what you want to see in terms of playing catch up at the other positions.
On the clock right now, we have Ian Singh, the snack god, drafting from the 8 spot. And what's interesting about his team so far, and Sean Green pointing this out on YouTube, 0 wide receivers on this team in the first 5 rounds. It's been Taylor, Javonte Williams, Swift, and now Price for the running backs. He also snared Trey McBride in the 2nd round. This is best ball, Terp. When you look at that start with no wide receivers, and this is slim, no kickers, no defenses, we only go 20 rounds. What do you make of that start with avoiding receivers in the first 5 rounds, maybe even 6? We'll see what he does here.
I think he's drawing dead, and I'm just being honest about it. I don't really think it's a format. I know people like to try weird things. I'm sure I don't know the drafter personally, and Carnell Tate's a guy that I like, so it makes a lot more sense. You can definitely just start drafting a ton of receivers here and catch up. But you kind of limit it when you do stuff like that. And you take 4 running backs without a receiver. You're kind of boxing yourself in to a certain position. You're not allowed to be really flexible.
Yeah.
Because guys are going to pop in, and you just almost have to take them. Or like running back value might fall. I'm just going to use Kenny Gainwell as an example. I'm not saying he's a value or anything. He could fall to you, around past ADP, and you just kind of can't take him because you don't have any quarterback runs going to start here, as we know in best ball. and you don't have any receivers. So like it makes it more difficult. Like you always say, like it'll be a little bit more balanced in these, because if you're not and you just start off 5 picks without a receiver, you're kind of boxing yourself into. There's a ton of receivers I like, and I know Theo likes. We talk about them all the time. Browns receivers, guys like that are falling down. That'll be in this range. A little later, but you put yourself in a position where it makes it a lot more difficult.
And by the way, we had Hanako-san pointing out that in this format, you only have to start 2 receivers. You have the double flex, so you could start up to 4, but you only have to start 2 in this format, and it's optimized scoring, right? So you don't have to figure out which receivers are going off on any given week. The system's going to do that for you, and certainly if you go 8 wide receivers in a row, like Hanako-san is suggesting, then the strategy gets a little bit more viable, obviously, with those top 4 running backs and the anchor tight end. It's certainly one way to play it. And Theo, that's what I think is so interesting about this, is how important. Well, listen, I'll talk to you about this after you make your picks on the turn, because I think it's more of a draft philosophy conversation that I want to get into. We're waiting for Peter Masterson to make his pick, which he does here. Mike Evans is the selection for Turf Toe at the 6'11". Theo, your thoughts here on what you're going to do at this turn, having 3 receivers and 2 running backs on this squad?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had a number of players in my queue that just went in the last couple picks. It would have been nice to get Mike Evans at the 701. I'm not in love with Mike Evans, but I think he was sort of primed up there for me. I think I'm going to roll the dice and take a BTJ and lean into BTJ putting up some spike weeks this year and being like a touchdown upside guy in Jacksonville. And I'm sort of mentally talking through my other pick. There's a chance we start seeing the quarterback run here. Obviously, let me lock in BTJ here.
You lock in BTJ. Let's talk about the quarterbacks while you're contemplating this final pick here, Theo, at the 701. We do only have 2 quarterbacks off the board. Josh Allen in the 4th. Lamar Jackson goes in the 6th. Now, in this, and I don't know why I have the big gorilla ADP up from Fantasy Mojo, since we're doing a best ball tournament here tonight. Well, I'll bring up the best ball tournament ADP and tell you, at this point in the draft, it's not all that uncommon to see only 2 quarterbacks off the board. However, we have seen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 quarterbacks go from right now to the time that Theo would be making his next selection. So, Theo, if you wanted upper echelon top 6 quarterback, you'd probably have to grab him right now.
Yeah, I think I'm going to pass quarterback. I think I'm going to lean into tight end. It's likely or Kittle for me here. I'm going to go with George Kittle, though. I'm not a massive Kittle guy, but I think he's trending towards week 1. And it gives me access to potentially some Brock Purdy if he's there at the 8-9 as well. If we avoid the quarterback run, this team could end up with some decent correlation. Again, kind of a tough run out for me, but I think both of those guys have potential for big, high upside weeks. Jalen Warren would have been a really fun pick there at the 6-7 turn. But again, I have the 2 running backs, so leaning into the tight end position there with Kittle instead of like the kind of the unknown upside there with Isaiah Likely. And if I've got to put it together at quarterback, obviously Jackson Dart, there's some correlation there with the neighbors pick. There's a number of ways to go at quarterback. Even Jared Goff with Jahmyr Gibbs, I think there's some positive correlation there.
I love what you did personally. I don't. You're giving yourself plenty of outs. Yeah, the quarterback run looks like it's starting here, but that probably, I don't think most of these guys are going to double tap. So, yeah. You have the Dart out. You have the Dak out. You have the, Lawrence out. You have the Purdy out. You have the Goff out. And you also have like the Malik Willis stuff you can build later. Bryce Young later type of thing. So, I like passing on quarterbacks there because like you're kind of like in a little bit of an uncomfortable position. Like, yeah, you take let's just say you take Jaden Daniels or Drake May or one of the guys with the stack, then you're going to get boxed out at tight end, and you're going to be kind of stuck to where it's, you're going to miss all these guys, the Kittles, the Likeleys, the Goddards, guys like that would fall to you. So you did have a tough run out because I know you would have took, probably anybody from Washington, probably Marvin Harrison, Warren, definitely Mike Evans. Nothing wrong with Brian Thomas. He's going to. Yeah,
I would have loved Parker Washington there, joking at the 6-7 turn. Honestly, I was kind of hoping for Parker Washington BTJ combination there which I think is a potential high upside pairing, especially in best ball. But I mean, Terp, it could have been a lot worse at the 6-7 turn than Kittle and BTJ
you get
there.
The tight end, you get to another receiver. You're not boxing yourself out at any positions. Yeah, quarterback. If you just survive this little run right here at the end, and even if people nobody is taken on, I'm probably going to jinx you, but nobody has taken anybody that really hurts you yet to where you could literally double tap them next and be good if you wanted to do that. And there's going to be some tight ends are going to fall back here. I think they're the top 2 positions you'd be looking at with your next 2 picks.
Team 10's probably going to go with Joe Burrow, and Team 12 probably goes with Dak, if I'm reading this board correctly. And they've got 2 picks. Burrow, excuse me. Burrow's gone. Dak's going to be gone to the Lamb drafter, I would imagine.
He has Josh Allen, so he probably
Lamb already has Josh Allen too. So
I misread that. That
might box them out. I mean, it could still, but people still do that and just close the position, but that wouldn't make really that much sense personally.
Yeah, there's been some research in this. I actually don't mind having the 2 quarterbacks by round 10. I think it's sort of plus EV in some of these best ball situations, especially FFPC, because you can go fragile. You can go with a 3 quarterback build. You can even go Terp in some of these tournaments, roll the dice and go with a 2 quarterback build and get a bunch of lottery tickets
if
late.
You're taking Josh Allen or you're taking Lamar Jackson, even if you're taking I like doing it. If I'm taking Burrow, I like getting just Dak or something like that behind him and then just close the position. If I'm waiting a little longer, I'm getting a dart Jordan Love. I want to get a 3rd guy. But if you're spending 4th round capital on Josh Allen, you're betting your team on Josh Allen. Let's just call it what it is. Your 2nd guy, yeah, he's important, but if Josh Allen doesn't do what Josh Allen's supposed to do, your team's probably in trouble.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, Lamar's a little interesting though because a lot of times he's going the 6th round. I took him in the 5th round in Pros versus Joes, tilted out on that pick. I could remember it like it was yesterday, but Lamar's interesting because Josh Allen, you're having to sometimes pay a 3rd round pick in this sort of format, a really early 4th. Lamar sometimes you get at the late 6th, mid 6th, so the double tap's a little more doable. But yeah, I'm sort of with you. Make that one big bet and then make a smaller bet with the Goff type tier.
We have a naked Dak Prescott going to Michael Coop with Coop's troops tonight at the 11 spot. However, we don't know what Coop's plans are in the 8th round. There might be a tight end worth looking at to make that Prescott pick a little bit more attractive. Terp, I know you got a bounce, man, but before we let you go, we will see you again Tuesday night for this same format, a best ball tournament at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. Have you guys figured this out yet? I was
not yet. You're still working on it.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a little hectic time, but we're figuring it out.
So here's what's on.
We'll be there no matter whatever the draft is. But I know it's best ball draft already full. We're trying to figure it out.
There's going to be you don't want to miss this one because the YouTube chat is going to have some sort of role into how
some sort of role. We're trying to figure that out to see how it makes sense to where it's not just a total,
right.
Free fall. We don't want to obviously mess up drafters that are drafting, so we're just trying to see exactly how to work it out. And there's a chance that we postpone it, but either way, we'll be there no matter what.
Some really good drafters in your chats every time, guys. The interactive drafts. It's not just some random fantasy podcast where all these guys are playing in these leagues.
They're sharp and they're people that either are in the leagues currently, while drafting, or they're guys who play against us every week. So it's definitely fun with the chat. We have a good, consistent chat that goes back and forth.
8:30 p.m. Tuesday night. Terp, we will see you on the FFPC YouTube channel, drafting a best ball tournament team. Thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight. Really appreciate it. We'll talk with you again soon.
See you guys. Good luck, Theo.
Yeah, take it easy, Terp.
At Dave Terp on X. That is the 14-time FFPC champion, Dave Terpoilli, chiming in tonight with his feedback on Theo's draft and some of these other drafters tonight, too. I was right. I guessed right. I guess Coop ends up going with Cowboy, Team 11 here at that 7-8 turn. Prescott and then Ferguson. Theo, I know you took Pickens, but I feel like Ferguson is not getting a whole lot of pub, a whole lot of talk about him. When you consider what he was able to do last year, if we are betting on a big Cowboys offensive season again this year, shouldn't we also be betting on Ferguson being drafted higher than whatever he was tonight, tight end 13? Probably should be going a little bit higher than that, unless you would see it differently.
No, I mean, I think Ferguson's fine. I mean, obviously, a lot of his scoring was with one of the wide receivers banged up. He scored a little bit with Lamb off the field. But Dak loves Ferguson. Ferguson's been consistent. He's been 100 targets, and I think this year he'll be 90-plus targets again. I think a lot of it is people are very enthusiastic about Ryan Flournoy and Dallas being in sort of like 11, utilizing a third wide receiver, sort of lowering the ceiling outcome for Ferguson. But Ferguson is priced right. I'm open-minded to Jake Ferguson. I took him in the pros versus Joes, sort of uncorrelated. So I'm open-minded to him. You sort of know what you're getting with Jake Ferguson. Almost a boring name to say, even in tight end premium. But I think he's an effective pick as well.
Team 7, I should have mentioned this up at the top, but we have FFPC royalty in here. Philip Hooton, the 2020 FFPC main event champion, aka Bullseye, is drafting from the 7 spot tonight, and he just grabs Josh Downs, who I think has also been a player that has really risen up draft boards right now. Theo, you talk about Tyler Warren and Josh Downs being guys that are going much higher than what they were prior to this Alec Pierce thing. I don't know what your read is on Alec Pierce, and then as a result, I don't know how you feel about Downs and Warren in FFPC drafts at the moment.
I like Downs a lot. I think Josh Downs is really, really interesting player. You're talking Tyler Warren? Sorry, I was looking at my board.
Just the beneficiaries.
Tyler Warren is an awesome pick in FFPC. I think we'll start seeing him in the late second more. We've seen it happen before, but everybody loves him at the beginning of the third now. So the natural ascension into the late second, I think, will be there. He's could end up with Trey McBride-like usage. He could end up dominating targets in Indianapolis. We could end up seeing 100 catches from him this year. He could be a cheat code player for tight end premium managers. So I think he's really, really fun for sure.
The draft we're covering tonight is the FFPC Best Ball Tournament, available for a $400,000 grand prize and $125 entry fee at myffpc.com. Also $125 is the entry fee for the baby gorilla this year. Basically the same exact concept as the big gorilla. You're managing your rosters. You're placing blind bids. You're setting your lineups, but it's just $125 to enter. If you've ever wanted to get into high stakes fantasy football, this is the perfect way to start and dip your toes in. You're still playing for a 6-figure grand prize. $100K will be the grand prize in the baby gorilla. We have live and slow drafts filling up every day at myffpc.com. That is where to go for the baby and big gorilla. Theo Gremminger drafting tonight from the 1 spot of this FFPC Best Ball Tournament. You're back on the clock at the 8:12 and the 9:01, and there is still some correlation out there. If you want to grab a quarterback here, take us through what you're thinking right now, Theo.
Yeah, I was considering double tapping quarterback there if Jackson Dart was still there because I have the Malik Neighbors bet, but the team ahead of me took him. I think one of the picks is obviously Brock Purdy. I'm very into Brock Purdy this year. I already have George Kittle, so I have correlation built in. It's the second pick for me that structurally I'm sort of struggling with. I think I'm going to lock in Purdy, but the other two guys that I think are really interesting in this queue are DK Metcalf, who I like more in a best ball setting than I do in a regular redraft. I'm very open-minded to Pittman, but I think DK is going to put up some big weeks there. And then J.K. Dobbins, who actually took today, that I'm betting on to give us a number of usable weeks, would help me catch up at the running back position. I could also pull up a quarterback here and pull up a guy like Jared Goff and take him a little bit early and then avoid sort of having a piecemeal quarterback 2 and maybe be done at the position. But I think I'm going to lean in, and I think I'm going to go with J.K. Dobbins. I think the vibes for me are pretty good here. It's a great offensive line. And then, obviously running back's a little difficult, but I think it's Dobbins over DK here for me, and I'm going to lock it in.
J.K. Dobbins is the pick. Not much to say about the Purdy pick. I think the chat pretty much just, I know I assumed you would be going Purdy with the final pick of the 8th round to go with your George Kittle there. The Dobbins one I think is interesting because the Broncos backfield, Theo, has been one of the most talked about backfields for fantasy purposes this season. You don't really have one guy going up. It's not a big gap backfield, as they say, right? You have 3 guys. 2 guys are kind of going back to back in Dobbins and Harvey, and then then you have the rookie Jonah Coleman. Dobbins was doing drills on Tuesday. I assume he practiced the last couple of days, but I can't confirm that right now. But it's a tradition unlike any other. J.K. Dobbins having some sort of significant injury that he's dealing with, but in this format, swinging for the fences might not be the worst strategy. And Dobbins certainly has a 1,000-yard season in him, at least the potential for a 1,000-yard season in him, even with Harvey and Coleman there.
Yeah, I mean, Dobbins was really good to start out last year. We also have to remember it's best ball, where, we don't need him to play the entire season in theory because we're going to piecemeal running back together. But he was giving us 14-plus points per game for like the first 5 weeks of the year. And it feels like that's sort of where he's headed. I don't think RJ Harvey's the worst pick in best ball, sort of where he's going. And I don't think that Jonah Coleman's the worst pick. I think taking shots on this Denver backfield is going to be advantageous, but it's not like we're taking J.K. Dobbins in the 7th round. We're getting him at the beginning of round 9. I think it's a good price to pay. But yeah, taking shots on this backfield, I think, is the smart way to do it. And even in redraft, I don't mind taking some Dobbins. I think, especially with some of the way I draft, where I'm drafting sort of these hero RB builds where I'm going to need to get some help from some of these guys like Dobbins. Mm-hmm. He gives us sort of this similar outcome. Like Tony Pollard goes 2 rounds ahead of J.K. Dobbins. I think J.K. Dobbins outscores Tony Pollard this year. R.J. Harvey went 2 rounds ahead of him here. I think he outscores R.J. Harvey. I think he's a better pick than Rico Dowdle. And Adam's right. I highly recommend the offensive line rankings article that just dropped at rotowire.com from Dan Fornick. It's free on the site. And I think it's one of the best fantasy articles I've read all offseason long. But he's got Denver at number 1. He goes into deep context about why he ranks these teams. He gives them a fantasy spin. Dan did a great job on that. And then also, if you want access to everything else at RotoWire this year, you can use the code Theo20 and get 20% off of any sub, including like all my rankings, all my dynasty stuff. But if you want a taste of what RotoWire has to offer, Dan's article is absolute fire. Go check it out.
Dan Fornick, just a couple of months removed from co-hosting this show with me. A lot of great insight, not only the offensive line, which he's an expert on, but just fantasy in general. He's a genius. He
is such a ball knower. I actually recorded with him. We're dropping an offensive line podcast, but Dan is also like an IDP expert. He just knows everything. Really, he's coached the game. He's played the game, but he really has strong takes. I think a lot of guys who do specific content, that whether it's offensive line or IDP or something like that, they kind of stay in their own lane, but Dan can talk ball with anybody on anything.
I want to ask you, I meant to ask you this before, Theo. This is the FFPC Best Ball Tournament, as we've pointed out several times tonight. This is not a managed format. The optimized scoring is going to take care of your lineup setting for you. Out of your first handful of picks, I was going to ask you this after you took the David Montgomery pick. Out of those first 5 picks, would you have changed anything based on this being best ball as opposed to a managed league? Like, how different do the first few rounds get for you when we're talking managed versus best ball?
I think it's a great question. I think really in a lot of these best ball formats, it's the ability to wait on quarterback sort of disappears because a lot of teams are going to double tap quarterback earlier than they would in redraft. I think that's sort of the number one takeaway. I think in best ball, getting usable weeks from guys in the tail end is the way you want to go approach things. Whereas in redraft, we might swing for the fences and take that handcuff running back that's going to get maybe no points in week 1, but we're kind of rooting for an injury. Whereas in best ball, we want to take shots on guys who are going to earn at least some scoring. I think best ball, you've got to kind of lean into structure because you don't have the ability and the crutch of the waiver wire to sort of help you out and bail you out. Where in FFPC, those first 2 weeks of the waiver wire, there's going to be a couple of tight ends that people are going to flock to and add. You don't have that luxury here. So I think a lot of best ball, it's like structural drafting matters most, and it matters even more than in redraft. And I think you have to look at sort of guys who can give you usable weeks. I think that's sort of the novice best ball player might swing for the fences and take those guys that they think could get like a 75-yard touchdown catch, like just draft a couple of those guys in round 17 on, then you could potentially burn a couple of roster spots. So I like grabbing guys that I think are going to give me usable weeks, even if the upside is not quite as there. Whereas in redraft, I'm swinging for the fences when we get to those final rounds.
What about let's talk about a closed 12-team league in best ball versus a national contest like you're in. Do you feel like you bend that rule a little bit and start taking some bigger swings earlier on, or does the best ball sort of philosophy trump that, where you still are just trying to find out guys that are not going to give you zeros?
Yeah, I think in a closed team league, it's interesting because you're way less open to things that are like very differentiating you, like a closed 12-team league necessarily going 0 RB or something like that. It doesn't really benefit you. Closed 12-team leagues tend to be more balanced builds where you don't want to get burned at a specific position. So like Dan Williamson, Andrew Schellenberg, and I, we draft in the varsity every year. And I know like even like the main event hat versus a varsity or a big payback. Dan and I split a big payback. We actually won it like 2 years ago. I think I'm going to do a big payback with Dan this year. To be determined, Bulky. We're still talking it through. But it's like the way you draft in those kind of leagues versus a main event. Main event, you still got to get to the playoffs to be in contention for that, like the big money prizes. But in some of those other formats, I think it's you draft maybe cautiously is not the right word, but you don't want to get too. You don't need to differentiate. You don't need to stack as many times. You don't need to be as open to like massive correlation and stuff like that. You're just trying to beat 11 people. Whereas in the main event, you're trying to beat 11 people in your league, but then you also have your eyes on the prize and what can I do in those big money weeks as well. So I think those kind of things differentiate.
Do you, do you feel like when you draft the best ball team, are you more reactionary to what other teams are doing than you would be with a managed league? Because you can, like you talked about earlier, you have that waiver wire safety net where you can adjust if you need somebody or if you're going to need somebody at a certain position. You can't do that in best ball. So as a result, how closely are you following what other teams are doing? And then as a result, maybe changing your structure or your team build based on how the flow of the draft is going.
I mean, I think I'm paying attention to what other teams are doing in even like a regular redraft format. You don't want to miss out on a run. I think a lot of people get into the notion that, I'm going to zig while others zag. I'm going to let everybody take, 12 quarterbacks in a row or this tight end run, and I'll just be okay because I'm such a sharp drafter. But sometimes if you're unwilling to hop in the run, you could end up losing out of 2 tiers worth of players, and you could be in like your 3rd tier at a position if you're not careful. In best ball, I think it's really important for us to watch the runs. And in some best ball formats, not necessarily this slim, you would see the kicker runs, the defense runs where you want to end up having 3 defenses or 2 kickers, and you want to pay attention to that sort of stuff. But in slim best ball like this, I think it's most important to sort of pay attention to like the quarterback run. And then certainly we want to keep an eye on the tight ends in FFPC where it can get really, really dry. And then we're sort of chasing it with like high volume, low ceiling type bets. So some little things differentiating for sure, but there is some correlation between the 2 formats, but for me, I think those are the ones that stand out the most.
Speaking of best ball, when Theo took Brock Purdy, I forgot to mention that if you feel quarterbacks are being undervalued in FFPC or any fantasy football format, check out the FFPC Superflex Best Ball Tournament, where you will have a ton of quarterbacks going in the first few rounds. The proper value and respect is given to these signal callers. $35 to enter, $100,000 grand prize. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that Superflex Best Ball Tournament. 2 quarterbacks, twice as nice. Theo's about to pick here in the 10th round. Before he does, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to find out what Theo did at the 10-12 and the 11-01. Theo Gremminger from RotoWire. I'm Eric Balkman. You're watching live coverage of the FFPC Best Ball Tournament on FFPC Insider Access right here on the Better Sports Network. We'll be right back.
What's up, guys? Andrew Cooper here of Fantasy Alarm. And guess what? The big gorilla is back over at FFPC. This contest has $5.8 million in prizes and $1 million up top to the winner. And it's got a pretty reasonable buy-in of $350, access to the high-stakes community where the best players play in all of fantasy football. You go out and you win a contest like this, and people are going to remember your name. The FFPC Big Gorilla open right now and $1 million coming home with you. And if you buy 3 teams right now, you get $50 back off the buy-in. You're going to want to buy multiple buy-ins to this contest because they also have the 7 bananas giveaway if you get the 7th pick multiple times. Check out the details over at myffpc.com on that, but you can get free best ball entries, free entries into the main event, which is a $2,000 buy-in contest, and possibly even, believe it or not, a jungle safari or $50,000. Your choice. I'm picking the safari. So go to myffpc.com, use promo code ALARM if you're a first-time player. They'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more, and you can get involved. And you know what? They also listened to you guys and added one more contest, the Baby Gorilla. Can't do 350? Why not do $125 buy-in, $100,000 grand prize, $675,000 prize pool? They have something for everyone over at FFPC, where the best players in the world play fantasy football.
Live coverage of the FFPC Best Ball Tournament rolls on here tonight. We have Theo Gremminger from RotoWire.com, the lead fantasy analyst, content director there at the OG Fantasy. I should have brought that up earlier tonight. The OG Fantasy on X, certainly doing a bang-up job constructing his team from the number 1 position tonight. We took a break right before you went on the clock, and I can't remember who it was. I'd have to scroll back and check, but somebody said, take Stribling with your next pick. And somebody else said, he won't back. Oh, Sean Green said he get back. He did make it back to you at the 10-12. You get the rookie on the Niners there, and then you go with a little Baker Mayfield here as well at quarterback. Let's talk about the Stribling pick first. There's a lot of conversation going on with the Niners receivers this year. Mike Evans there for the first time ever. Christian Kirk, who's there for the first time ever. He's banged up right now. Ayuk nowhere to be found. They bring back Deebo Samuel, but then they got this Stribling guy, and I've been saying for months, he was 1 pick away from being a first-round wide receiver, a player we should probably be taking seriously, Theo, and you clearly are here.
Yeah, I love Stribling there. I actually really like the run out at wide receiver in this range, where very open-minded to Jaden Reed, Stephon Diggs, Matthew Golden, Jordan Addison, and Stribling. I think it's like a really fun range of wide receiver where, you know, if I would have taken quarterback earlier and had QB2 locked in, I could have potentially double-tapped wide receiver here and liked it a lot. I considered the Kyler Murray, Jordan Addison correlation and just taking them right there, getting another correlated pick, but I ultimately went with Stribling. Now I have Kittle, Stribling, and Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's been a player that I've been drafting. I drafted him in a main event as my QB1. It's the longest tenured starting quarterback that Kyle Shanahan's ever had, which I think is like an interesting twist. I don't remember. That's not a stat that I came up with. It was a 49ers beat reporter. I don't recall who it was. Wish I could attribute this person, but they sort of talked about how Shanahan's never had like a whole lot of continuity. If you think about like the quarterbacks who have come through the system, it's been like short-term type guys for him. So I wonder if there's another level of play for Brock Purdy that maybe we haven't seen just unlocked. And he's been such a consistent scorer, but I think Stribling's got a ton of contingent upside where if Mike Evans misses time, you could end up with Kittle and Stribling both in like really, really like high usage roles. So I think it could be a really nice run out for me.
Yeah, and I think it was David Krupski was saying about the SC substation there. This is not a thing for you.
Well, I don't love it. I wish they were practicing next to the ocean. They're close to the ocean. They could have just built a practice field overlooking the Pacific Ocean. That would have been a healthier lifestyle for these guys. But I mean, they could have done it at the old Candlestick or something. They could have done something down there. So I don't know. It's not great. I'm not like a nut about it, but Scott Barrett talks about it a ton. We podcast all the time together, and these guys keep getting injured. So I don't know.
So there could be something there. You're willing to say there could be something there, but it's not usually something that's changing your draft strategy.
Yeah, when there's smoke, there's fire. I think anecdotal evidence in really anything if there's a lot of anecdotal evidence, we should probably pay attention. Maybe in 20 years, they know something more about this sort of thing. But at this point, I'm definitely going to continue drafting 49ers. So as long as Brock Purdy's not the one getting hurt, that would hurt me a ton here. But Stribling, by far the youngest 49ers skill position player. A lot of talk that he's going to be playing the Z role. At first, he was going to be playing that Jawan Jennings blocking slot role. But it sounds like he's going to be in the Ricky Pearsall role. So I think he's really interesting here. I also see Mekhi Lemon going to the 1201. That could end up being a really good value if he sort of comes back from being banged up. I think that's a really strong pick for Team 12, who continues to do well.
Yeah, Lemon is interesting too. With back when we were all talking about these players before the NFL draft, right? It was like a big three of Tate, Tyson, and Lemon, and everybody had their own order or whatever. And then the draft happens, and maybe even shortly before the draft, it became a big two, and Lemon kind of dropped off. And then he had the hamstring stuff in minicamp, and then the hamstring came back in training camp now with him missing practice as well. And Devonta Smith also interestingly enough, missing time with a soft tissue injury. It sounds like you are willing to buy the dip on both those players if there is one because of that injury situation with each of those Eagles wideouts.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is not August 31st. We're not in Vegas in the main event. And this is also the best ball tournament where we're swinging for the fences. It's still a significant entry fee. It's still $125. It's not zero, but it's still a number where we're looking to swing for the fences here and try to get like a huge outcome. So I think embracing fear of the unknown, potentially taking on some of these injured players has been kind of high EV. I was in another draft today where I took Emeka Egbuka, I took Luther Burden, I took Mike Evans all in the same draft, and it was with Nelson Sousa and Alan Soslowski, and they were kind of making fun of me for drafting all these injured guys. But hey, that's how you got to find discounts somehow. So maybe that's the way to do it.
Yeah, and so certainly picking up these guys that have the injury discount on them right now could pay off not only in September, but perhaps more so in December when the money is getting doled out here. I do want to bring up Team 9 here tonight, Theo. I know you're coming up on your 12th and 13th round picks. Team 9 is the mad genius of football. That's Todd Aaron. He's in a ton of these live streams that we do. He takes Brock Bowers at the 109. In your opinion, is it overkill to go Pitts and Kelsey in round 6 and 7? Or because of the tight end premium format that the FFPC has, along with the dual flex, where all three of those guys could start for him on any given week in this best ball format, do you think that that's still a viable strategy to go tight end heavy, even with Bowers in the first round?
Yeah, I mean, I think that where he paid for these guys, it's fine. I think Pitts was a really good pick right there in round 6, where it's that tight end run. And then Kelsey, I'm not in love with, but he didn't reach to take Kelsey. So I think when people force the purple builds, where it's like they force the tight end heavy builds, that can burn them. But when it sort of comes to him naturally, and he's sort of just building it through ADP and drafting the value on the board, then I'm perfectly open to it. I, on the other hand, have no tight ends except for George Kittle, and I was hoping Dalton Schultz or Hunter Henry would come back. So I think I'm pushing it to the limit even more. And I don't think I'm going to let them bully me at tight end here. I could take... There's a couple of guys I really like that are coming up here. So I might be off of tight end again. Probably not the right move. But there's some really high upside guys available to me that are not tight ends here. So we'll see which way this guy goes.
Go ahead.
No, it's...
Please.
No, I was going to say, I mean, I have 3 guys in the queue that sort of all make sense correlation-wise.
This is where we're just past the halfway point of this draft, obviously, and Theo has the one tight end in George Kittle. But as to his point, there are some other players out there that could make sense on his roster build so far, which we are looking at through 11 rounds. Theo Gremminger from RotoWire features 3 running backs on his roster, 5 wide receivers, a tight end, and 2 quarterbacks. Now you're on the board. Charbonnet was the pick before to Peter Masterson, so your tight end should be there.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, Hawkinson is there. He's a low upside guy. I think for me, locking down Woody Marks and stack cuffing this Houston backfield and just having both of them, I think makes a little bit of sense since I'm kind of fragile at the running back 2 spot. So I'm going to lock him in. Then in terms of Hawkinson and Dulcich, those guys feel fine. But I don't know. I think I'm just going to keep pushing tight end around and get really ugly in the last couple rounds and maybe take some shots on some guys. I think for me, the pick here is actually wide receiver and going with Casey Concepcion or Jaden Higgins or Coker, I think are all really viable picks here. I think these guys are really, really interesting here. I think I'm going to lean into it, and I'm going to go with Casey Concepcion and take a high upside guy here.
All right, so Concepcion and Marks are the picks at 12-12 and 13-01 for Theo. I have to unpack some more stuff here on your roster that I didn't do before. Mayfield was your pick in the 11th, Theo. I don't see any Buccaneers on your team. However, how attractive was Mayfield there as your second quarterback, knowing there are some backstacking opportunities for Tampa and Baker Mayfield?
Yeah, I mean, it made a lot of sense for me to take Baker there. I think that Kyler Murray is really, really appealing, but Baker is going to start the entire season, whereas Kyler Murray, I think, will start the entire season. But there's potential if they get ruled out of the playoffs and they sort of have a losing record, you could see some J.J. McCarthy, whereas I think Baker is going to be in play. And I do think with Baker Mayfield, you actually have potential for a lot of correlation in the back 8 rounds. There's a number of guys that get drafted that are targets of mine now with Baker there. Not to name, I mean, I can name names here. Ted Hurst, Cade Otton, if Jalen McMillan's falling to like an absurd range because people are really worried about the health. And I think in this sort of build, Tez Johnson around 20 might make some sense. Sean Tucker, if you want to push in another running back. So the Bucs have, like Denver, they have an elite offensive line. They have an offensive line. I believe we have them ranked 3rd overall in our rankings over at RotoWire. So they're an elite offensive line, and we know Baker Mayfield can put up big spike weeks, and it's easy to build back half correlation. And I don't have to. It gives me the option, Bulky, of also going with a 2 quarterback build with Mayfield and Purdy. I got to double check the bye weeks, but gives me an option at least.
Yeah, the bye. I have it right in front of me here.
8 and 10. 8 and 10.
Yeah,
I'm good.
So you're good.
Yeah,
you're good.
I'm good.
The stat cuffing that you did with the Texans here with Montgomery and Marks, do you like, and I'm not saying Gibbs is obviously off the table. You don't pick Gibbs based on that. But when you look at running backs in the 5th round, 6th round, 7th round, do you start looking at the possibility of stat cuffing one of those running backs and make that decision on the primary guy? Like did that factor into your Montgomery draft choice at all, knowing that you might be able to add Woody Marks later?
No, not at all. But I think when it really came down to, I mean, I really like Marshawn Lloyd a lot. I think in a redraft league, I'm taking him there kind of automatically. Jaden Blue, I think, is interesting as well. But it gives you the ability to be a little more fragile at the running back position. Now, certainly, if a 3rd running back, if Jawar Jordan ends up becoming a thing or something like that, if David Montgomery goes down, then you sort of lose a little bit of edge here. But Woody Marks had a bunch of usable weeks last year. He's got the pass-catching ability. Stack cuffing, I'll give a shout out to Billy Muzio, my former podcast co-host, when we were podcasting a player profiler, and I'll give a shout out to Dave Hubbard, one of the best to ever do it. He was sort of stack cuffing a lot in best ball, and then Mike Leone and Jack Miller have established the run, both really smart guys. They've talked about it. They've written articles about this where it looks kind of like a square bet, like where a lot of people might look at the board and say, "Oh, look at this idiot, this guy for taking 2 running backs from Houston. That's low EV." It might be low EV in a main event when a guy like Marshawn's on the board, but if Houston sort of beats expectations as an offense, and if some of the people in the chat were correct and it's a little bit more Woody Marks, I think there's going to be a number of usable weeks, and I'm going to get access to both of them. Go Jin, I miss Billy podcasting. I miss Billy Muzio podcasting too. Was a great podcaster, but Billy's doing really, really well in a number of things right now. So no worries about Billy.
Yeah, he's doing just fine. It's just the rest of us that are suffering, not hearing him talk about what's on his mind for fantasy football. It stinks. But we get other guys like Theo Gremminger doing it, which obviously helps out. The 13th round here, Theo, featured 2 Cleveland rookie receivers going off the board. You drafted Conceepcion. Denzel Boston goes to Tris Tollefson at Team 10, the 8 Blue Moose. What was the deciding factor with Conceepcion over Boston? I mean, obviously you weren't considering Boston there. You're considering some other receivers. But why did Conceepcion make the cut over Boston? Was it simply NFL draft capital? Are you a big believer in his talent over Boston's? Because Boston's really creeping up a lot of FFPC draft boards at the moment.
I mean, I like them both, and I have so much. I took them both in the pros versus Joes, and then I took Shedeur Sanders in the final round, sort of betting on him. Sounds like it's going to be Deshaun Watson. I think eventually we'll see Shedeur Sanders, though. I think they're both really good. I had them both as first round picks. I won the Huddle report this year for the best mock draft, and that was one of the picks I got wrong. Was Denzel Boston. I had him as a first round talent. So I love the talent. I think when it comes down to it, it's just the types of profiles they are. It's going to be easier for KC Conceepcion to hit in sort of a lower scoring offense than it is Denzel Boston. Denzel Boston, some beat reporters comparing to like a Drake London type, but I think the fact that KC's there, it probably prevents Denzel from having getting that big slot role. He's going to be mostly an outside receiver. So you start talking about guys like Michael Pittman Jr., like Drake London. It could happen for him, but it might be a little bit more slow developing. KC Conceepcion, we could see utilized sort of like Zay Flowers, and we saw Zay Flowers thrive under Todd Monken in Baltimore. I think KC's a little bit of a better bet if one of them's going to hit in year one, I think it's KC Conceepcion in a major way. But I think both of these guys are great players to have on your dynasty roster, because if Cleveland gets the quarterback position right in year two, next year when they draft a quarterback, then all of those guys could become major values. So I'm open-minded to both, and my bags are packed on Denzel Boston's one of my highest rostered guys on like Underdog. I was drafting him super late. Now he keeps coming up and up and up.
Theo mentioned it with dynasty drafts, and obviously both Boston and Conceepcion were first-round picks in a lot of FFPC rookie dynasty drafts this year. Don't forget, FFPC still has dynasty startups going on all the way through the start of the NFL season, both slow, and live drafts. They start at $100. They go up to $5,000. You can play fantasy football year-round against players like Theo Gremminger with FFPC Dynasty and Dynasty Empire Leagues. Remember, in those Empire Leagues, half the prize pool gets set aside each and every year. And for anybody who wins that league 2 years in a row, they not only get that year's purse, they get that huge Empire pot that's been building as well. MyFFPC.com is where to go if you want to play FFPC Dynasty Leagues right now. We're coming up on your pick here, a couple of picks here. I keep forgetting you're on the turn. We're looking at 14-15. You talked about Conceepcion here as a player that you do have a lot of shares of, and you drafted him here as your number 6 receiver. You have 4 running backs on your roster, the 2 quarterbacks. I know you tight end is a possibility here. We'll see what Peter Masterson does from the 2-hole to see what he leaves you. But I got to believe, Theo, one of these picks is probably got to be a tight end for you here, right?
One of the picks will definitely be a tight end. I have a couple tight ends in the queue. I'm open-minded to a running back or 2 here as well. So I'm sort of open-minded to a number of things here. If you can't take all the tight ends here, we'll see which way he goes. He's taking it down. I don't know. There's some interesting ways he could go about this one. There's also some interesting wide receiver values for him. We'll see which way he goes. I'm actually not sure. He's down to 10 seconds.
Well, this is Masterson right now this is team 2. He's already got Mark Andrews, who he took in the 9th. He's already got Chiga Okonkwo, who he took in the 11th round. He does add another one here in Gunnar Helm. I don't know if that was one of the guys that you
that was one of the guys in the queue for sure. But I get AJ Barner, who I'm very comfortable drafting here at the 14-12. So I'm going to lock in AJ Barner. And then I'm sort of open-minded to my next pick here. It could easily be another tight end.
Oh, and get your 3rd tight end in the 15th. Okay.
There's also a couple of wide receivers. I'm starting to be
you
pretty
mentioned
good
some
at
running backs in the queue too, Theo. I think okay, so while Theo is thinking about this, we talked about a lot of different ways to go, and I'll ask a question about balance here when Theo makes his decision. But there are running backs, there are receivers, there are tight ends, and certainly having just Purdy and Mayfield as his only two quarterbacks, you could look at a third quarterback here, or maybe let that go, or maybe just be done with the quarterback position. Theo, you can go pretty much any which way here, and whatever you say is probably going to surprise me.
Yeah, I don't think there's really an edge pick here. I do think since it's a tournament setting, taking a running back here, I'm going to go with Brian Robinson, who I think has a clear role as a cuff, swinging for the fences a little bit on that one. But I think if Bijan misses time, I think he would be a really valuable piece to have. And I think even if Bijan plays, I think Brian Robinson will get enough touches that he'll maybe have a couple of viable weeks. It's sort of a tilting pick right there. Wide receiver would have been, if I had another running back rostered, I probably would have gone with a wide receiver there. AJ Barner helps me catch up a lot at the tight end position, I think. I think that ended up being kind of a really nice run out for me to get him there. Brian Robinson was fine, though. Brian Robinson is one of the kind of better handcuff running backs. He's had multiple seasons with 700 rushing yards. So I think it's fine. Obviously, last year was sort of a zero. We'll see.
Theo grabs Brian Robinson, followed by Isaiah Pacheco to Masterson with the 1502 pick. In regards to Barner and that Seahawks offense, two big changes there, right? You lose Clint Kubiak to the Raiders, and you replace him. And I always forget the dude's name. The guy who was the tight ends coach for the Niners is now the
Brian Fleury.
Thank you, Fleury,
who was an undefeated high school quarterback.
Wow.
He won a state championship in Maryland. Little fun fact there.
You've forgotten more about football than apparently I'll ever know. I never would have pulled something like that out. But yeah, good to know about Brian Fleury, who's the new OC there. And then obviously no Kenneth Walker, but they've replaced him with Jadarian Price. I guess this applies to AJ Barner as well. But Theo, how do you think? And I've been watching Hard Knocks, trying to glean information from this, and the only thing I've been able to see so far is maybe Rashid Shaheed gets a bigger role this year. How do you think the offense changes in Seattle now with no Kubiak, no Walker?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I don't know how much they're going to change. I do know that Rashid Shaheed is a player that I've drafted a lot of, where you don't have the midseason trade. You have the full offseason to sort of ramp him up. And I think it makes sense that he would be highly utilized. There's been some positivity with A.J. Barner as well. We know that's a sort of a Mike McDonald favorite. I think we'll see a little bit of more of Elijah Arroyo this year as well. Mm-hmm. I think Jadarian Price is the one, though, that could have some juice and some steam, comes back and does some stuff to end preseason. I think more people are going to be sort of into that value. And I think that the notion that George Halani and Emmanuel Wilson are going to sort of hold him back could end up being something that we sort of forget about by the time we're drafting in Vegas.
We are entering, or Theo, his next pick will be in the 16th round, which means you are 75% done with this roster. Theo, in the FFPC Best Ball Tournament, just 20-round Best Ball Slims like this, is there a position that you want to be done with at this point? Like, you don't want to have to be drafting running backs or quarterbacks or receivers or tight ends?
Yeah, I think in an ideal world, you're done at running back here, and you're done at tight end, and you're sort of piecemealing it together with a bunch of wide receivers. Chasing running back, when even now I'm very fragile. I'm at a 5 running back build, and one of them is the Houston stack cuff. So for me, being done at, really, you don't want to be chasing it at tight end. You don't want to be chasing it at running back. Really, in the last 5 rounds, I think the wide receivers are usually the most appealing picks. There's going to be some running backs, though, that I think are fun in these next couple of rounds, but they're a little bit more like theoretical bets than guys that we know are going to score some points. I think that's why Brian Robinson is a little bit appealing. We know that Tyler Algier was utilized a great deal in this backfield. I don't think that the run out for Robinson will be quite as good, but I also know that they're not going to run Bijan Robinson into the ground. He's such a dynamic piece of everything they do in the pass game as well. So I do think Robinson will give me like some usable weeks. He's not just he's more of just a contingent upside bet, but I think in best ball he could give me some usable weeks. In redraft, he's a guy you just park on your bench, and if Bijan goes down, he goes in. But in best ball, I think he can give me a little something. But yeah, I don't love having to chase running back in these last couple rounds. I need to chase running back. I need to chase tight end. And then I'm also at only a 2 quarterback build. So might be at 2 quarterbacks by the time we get to the end of this, because we're sort of scraping the bottom of the barrel right here at quarterback.
Theo Gremminger from RotoWire drafting an FFPC Best Ball Tournament team tonight. The pick that just went off the board that I want to talk about regarding the Ravens backfield, Michael Coop takes Justice Hill there. If Derrick Henry, all of a sudden, this is going to be the year that he falls off the cliff or has a serious injury, what do you think the Ravens do in that backfield? I mean, is there value in Justice Hill? Do you think that they'd sort of committee it? Would they sign somebody like Najee Harris or something like that? I'm just kind of curious what you think the contingent value is for some of these Ravens running backs not named Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. Adam Randall's a guy that I like a lot, but he was a converted wide receiver to running back. He did have a really good year last year at Clemson, and he offers that size, speed, ability that not the same as Derrick Henry, but he is a larger back. Justice Hill probably would get the first crack at it. He's extremely boring, but he does catch the football. And I think there's some contingent value that there'd be a lot of manufactured touches for Zay Flowers if Derrick Henry went down. Even though the offense as a whole would suffer, Zay Flowers would be utilized an insane amount. There would be a ton of, potentially just get the ball right around the line of scrimmage, quickly out of Lamar Jackson's hands, and use him sort of as an extension of the running game. So it's an interesting one. I think it's probably still Justice Hill, though. I love Randall if you're in a deep dynasty format. I think FFPC, the rosters are too shallow. It's going to be hard for you to carry. If you're carrying Adam Randall through cut day in FFPC, your roster is probably not that great.
Or it's really awesome.
or it's really awesome, and you can just want to take that shot, and you have Derrick Henry, and you want to just roll with his potential replacement. But I think most FFPC leagues, he's going to end up on the waiver wire in pretty much all formats.
Team 12 ends up drafting Fernando Mendoza here with the final pick of the 15th round to go along with Cam Ward and Josh Allen. I'm a little surprised, and obviously we don't have Strider Robbins on tonight to talk to him about this, but he's a very accomplished best ball tournament player. Going with Josh Allen, I would have thought just one other quarterback would have been fine. He adds Mendoza there, a guy who's not even guaranteed to start the majority of the season. It has me scratching my head a little bit, Theo. I wonder what you think about Mendoza. How many games does he start for the Raiders this year?
You saw some beat reporters talking about just sort of how special they think he is and how it's a little bit more of a chance that he could take the job than I think maybe the fantasy community is letting on now. I think it's fine. I mean, he has Josh Allen, but he didn't take a second quarterback until the 13th round with Cam Ward. So I think that taking Fernando Mendoza there was actually a pretty good pick. He's got to chase. Having Cam Ward as your only QB second quarterback, it's sort of a tough bet to make. But I think Mendoza gives him a little bit of upside, and I think he could end up getting some usable weeks from him. I had Trey Tucker in my queue and Adonai Mitchell. They both go. That's nice to see.
Yeah, well, it happens, right? And it's just I just fully expect it now in drafts like this, going against this type of competition. But who you didn't mention there is the guy who went right between him, Cyrus Allen, who is getting a ton of love right now from Chiefs beat reporters, fantasy players. I'm glad Adam Hahn is in the chat tonight because he was talking of Cyrus Allen back in June. Your thoughts on what this guy is going to be able to do his rookie year, playing alongside of, granted, players like Worthy and Rice and Kelsey, but catching balls from Mahomes?
I mean, I think it's very interesting when you look at it and sort of what is the upside case. I do think it's a little cautionary that we always seem to see these sort of guys steaming up in draft boards where it seems like there's always a Chiefs younger player or sort of unknown upside guy. So I'm open-minded to drafting him. I think where they drafted him here, it's all upside anyway. I think I'm going to lock in Kamani Vidal here.
Yeah, Theo is up right now at the 16-12. The pick is going to be the Chargers running back Kamani Vidal, who goes right after a mini receiver run of Malik Washington, Jalen McMillan, and Ryan Flournoy. Vidal adds a sixth running back to the stable of rushers for Theo here. We'll talk about that pick in a little bit. Take us through the 17-01, Theo.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. Again, I'm really fragile at tight end here. I think this is sort of a swing for the fences type pick. I could go Sean Tucker. I think he's in my queue. There's a couple of wide receivers that I'm also considering. I think Sean Tucker is probably the move here, and then I'm done at running back. So I'm going to go Sean Tucker.
Jahmyr
So I get a
Gibbs,
little bit of, yeah.
Go ahead.
There you go. No, I was going to say I get a little bit of, I mean, Sean's right. He was in my queue. I had LaQuint Allen in the queue as well, which would have been an interesting pick, but I don't necessarily need the 7th running back, but I think it's based on the fact that it's Brian Robinson, Kamani Vidal, and now Sean Tucker. If I get usable weeks out of the 2 of the 3 of those guys, it's sort of if Bucky Irving were to go down, I think Tucker would be really interesting. Kamani Vidal, we already know about his contingent upside, and we know that Harbaugh really likes him. And then do they want to keep Bijan Robinson sort of upright? Do we get some Brian Robinson sort of usable get-by weeks? Really, the swing for the fences guys were Vidal and Tucker. Robinson feels like kind of a structural pick, but I'm done at running back now. I probably need another tight end or 2, and then it's wide receiver. So 3 more picks, and then that's it. And I think quarterback, I'm a 2 quarterback build here, Bulky.
It certainly seems that way. I mean, you're looking at who did just went Tagovailoa, and that was the 31st quarterback. So I think you're probably better off ignoring that position and focusing in on receiver and tight end here. I just to go back to the Vidal pick, the Mike McDaniel comment, we talked about that with Hampton earlier. How did you feel about Vidal before he said that? Or maybe you just feel the exact same with what he could do and the contingent upside. Granted, if Hampton goes down, he's still got to deal with Keaton Mitchell there too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't put too much lip service into the Mike McDaniel comment. I think it's still very much Omarion Hampton's backfield, and then Keaton Mitchell is the guy they're working in. I think if it was a negative game script, and I think that Chargers were trailing, do we see Kamani Vidal used as like the receiver out of the backfield, like we saw down the stretch when Hampton came back from injury? I think there's a lot of like scenarios here where you could see some Vidal usable weeks, but I talked about this on another show where Omarion Hampton, maybe you don't want to take him at like the 202 because you're scared, but that shouldn't make you get off of him at like the 209, 210 level. The touchdown upside is just too strong for him, and we know Mike McDaniel backfields have produced just big-time major scorers year in, year out with Achane and Mostert, so Hampton is still the best bet there.
Going back to the Tampa backfield, you just took Tucker. I think it's weird with Bucky Irving. I had been on the Irving. I was off the Irving train, I should say, early on when he was going so high. And then I think Adam Levitan from Established Run was just talking about this. He saw the fantasy reaction of everybody collectively being down on Irving that he fell so far that even Levitan didn't like him. He started taking him. And I still, in the back of my mind, I like Irving at a certain value, but I know that he got 0 carries inside the 5-yard line last year. Sean Tucker is pretty good at the goal line. And then they do have a pretty good pass catching maven in Kenny Gainwell that they gave decent money to as well. Now, I don't think that's going to stop Irving from catching passes this year, Theo, but I do think it's a little bit interesting that we see this guy slipping, and you can tell yourself a story where Tucker's getting the goal line, Gainwell's getting the catches, and Irving might just be getting, sort of like scraps in that offense. I don't know if that necessarily happens. Certainly he's the top Buccaneers running back drafted, but it is a little concerning to me, even still at this lowered ADP for Irving.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, a lot of times drafting the running back 3, this is the kind of offenses that we want to chase the running back 3 from. The uncertain nature of whether Bucky Irving can sort of hold up after having multiple injuries last year and then missing OTAs, the shoulder, all this sort of stuff with him. I think that's an interesting one. But the Bucs and the Chargers, a lot of times we're sort of ignoring the RB3 overall in this sort of contest, and I think that's probably the correct way to play it. But if an RB3 is going to hit, we want to chase a great offense like the Chargers, especially a player with pass catching ability like Vidal, or basically an injured situation and a very good offense with Tampa Bay and Sean Tucker. Tucker's good. We know he had like that RB1 overall week. I think he had 2 top 5 weeks that year. But it's really the touchdown upside where, like you said, Gainwell would take on a huge role, but could there be a scenario where Tucker falls in the end zone 7-8 times this year if Bucky Irving does get banged up? I think that could be the case.
Well, you took Mayfield, you took Tucker. Obviously, I'm big on the Buccaneers this year. I think with as bad as they were beaten up, like across the board, receivers, running backs, Mayfield, the offensive line, everybody was just torched on that team, and it showed. And even when these guys started to try to play through injury, you think about Egbuka and Mayfield later on, and they just couldn't get it done because they were too hurt. I think this year, coming into the season healthy, and I know what a big fan of Egbuka you are, I just think that Buccaneers offense is ready to pop. And I wouldn't put it on the same level of Jacksonville where I'm just trying to get any piece of it like I am with the Jaguars. But Tampa Bay is right up there for offenses that I want to be in on this year, Theo, just in sort of general with all their players.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think that there are certain offenses we want to bet on this year. Detroit, Dallas, the Chargers. But I think Tampa Bay is an interesting one. I had Sigmund Bloom come on, and he thinks that this could be like the skeleton key offense for us. I think some people are making big bets on New Orleans, and I'm certainly open-minded to that one. Chicago feels like a team that we can really stack and attack. All of those teams are interesting. And then it's also, we don't, like, for most of these teams, we think that the game flow is going to be good. Tampa Bay obviously has some really strong pieces on defense, the pass rush. But they were a pass funnel defense last year, so it could lend itself to good game scripts. We know Detroit has sort of the beat-up secondary, so a lot to like with chasing specific offenses in this format. And we also make sort of a smaller bet where we're just betting on correlation, where in a best ball tournament, if we run pure on the perfect weeks, having a Sean Tucker, maybe potentially I take another Bucks receiver here, it could pay off.
FFPC Chap Leagues is not something I brought up yet tonight, but I will right now because I think the strategy changes in that as well. If you're drafting in an FFPC Chap League, you're not trying to be the best team. You just want to be the surviving team, the team that's not eliminated, the team that is not the lowest scoring team on any given week. That is how you win your league. In fact, if you are not the lowest scoring team in your league at any given week in the season, you win your league. You can win cash. You can win FFPC Big Gorilla or FFPC main event entries. Those leagues start off at $35. They go up from there. All those teams that are eliminated, their players go right into the free agent pool. You can bid on them and acquire them and create these super teams. Chop leagues are a lot of fun. MyFFPC.com is where to go to play in chop leagues. Theo Gremminger from RotoWire is playing in an FFPC Best Ball Tournament team draft tonight, and he is on deck. No, he is on the clock with the 1812 and the 1901. Theo, take us through the thoughts that you're processing at the moment.
Well, I'm getting sniped right and left here at the tight end position where Jake Tonjes, Darren Waller, and Michael Mayer goes. So I think I'm going to force a tight end pick here. I'm also going to get correlation. So I'm going to lock in Ted Hurst and lean into Tampa Bay. And then I think I'm going to lean into sort of the stack cuffing argument here. And I'm going to go with, I took AJ Barner. I'm going to make a bet on Elijah Arroyo here, who's got some positivity and buzz out of camp. He's entering year 2, day 2 draft capital. I think the fact that I have AJ Barner makes me like him a little bit more here. Mm-hmm. And tight end is completely beat up right now. So I don't think there's another pick for me here. There's a couple of interesting tight ends, but I think for me, I'm just going to lean into it. And I'm going to own the Seattle tight end room.
Arroyo joins A.J. Barner on Theo's squad. The real-life Seahawks teammates become his number 2 and 3 tight ends on this roster. And obviously, if you are going to win the $400K with this, this tight end room obviously has to come through. Kittle, we don't know exactly when he's going to be active to start the season. It seems like it's trending week 1. Theo, are you of the belief that we will see Kittle in Australia when we're?
I don't know about the. I wouldn't make him take that plane ride. It's a horrible trip for him. Even though you're coming from the West Coast, it's still a horrible trip. I would let Kittle stay back, but he's sort of a maniac. The guy might just want to go to Australia and play and put up just a monster number. So never say never, but I wouldn't mind it. But I also get the Seattle guys, so I'll be enjoying those first 2 games out in Vegas, Bulky, Wednesday night and Thursday.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Wednesday and Thursday this year, which is a little bit different than what we've had the past couple of years with Thursday and Friday. It's going to just make more drafts more fun on Friday night with nothing there, with no games going on. Quinshon Booty is the pick here from Corey Heath. The Donald ends up taking Booty, and I think he is a fascinating player right now because he's been doing very well in training camp, and yet he is blocked by AJ Brown and Romeo Doubs, two players that have equally been like getting a lot of pub from the beat writers there and fantasy players alike. But Booty is one of these players that I don't think he's going to be moved. I mean, my co-host for the HSFFO, Farrell Elliott, says you don't usually see trades like this go off right before the start of the season, but it's a possibility. Do you think Booty gets moved, or is he on New England this year? Because certainly if he's on the Patriots, not all that great, but if Brown or Dobbs are to miss time, there's some contingent upside here in the 19th round for Booty.
You know, I think they're going to eventually just hold on to Quinshon Booty. I don't see a reason why they are, a Super Bowl contender, a team that was in the Super Bowl last year, why they would move a piece that was good for them last year. So I think Booty eventually just stays with New England. I think that it could be a great run out for him if he lands in the right situation, though. He's got talent. He's young enough. We know he had some spike weeks, and he actually drew a higher number of targets for consecutive weeks from Drake May. We look at Drake May like down the stretch his rookie year. They use Quinshon Booty a lot, and we saw it also last year at times. So I eventually just think they just hold on to him, though. It doesn't make sense to move it, unless there's some sort of friction, like we saw with like an AJ Brown situation in Philly. Moving a player that sort of helps you win, especially when his contract is cheap, there's really no reason to do it in the NFL. So I think New England will just hold on to him.
Yeah, and it was the opposite for Booty, right? Because like when the Brown rumor started, I mean, this is a guy that was working out. He never had one bad thing to say, kept his head down and kept working hard, showed up to minicamp, OTAs, training camp, and it was the exact opposite of what you heard with AJ Brown in Philly. So he's definitely doing his part to do whatever he can to further his career, whether that's in New England or maybe setting himself up for a second contract here coming up in the next year or two. We have now entered round 20 as Theo anxiously awaits his final pick here. We mentioned that you were trying to get pieces of the Browns offense. Fannin, the two rookies we talked about. What do you make of Jerry Jeudy? Is he kind of lost in the sauce here, or is there still something of a best ball value to be gained by taking Jeudy late?
I mean, I think there's some interesting value in it because there's a chance he gets moved. I think ultimately Jerry Jeudy can end up playing somewhere else. The team likes Isaiah Bond, who's a year two player. And then the team obviously likes Casey Conceipcion and Denzel Boston a great deal. So I think if Jeudy gets moved, he could have some usable weeks. But this is about right. I mean, I think he's a final round type guy. We're not used to seeing him go in this range, but you could do way worse with your 19-20 turn right there than David Njoku and Jerry Jeudy. I think that went pretty well for Team 12.
This was a draft that filled pretty quickly once we announced that it was going to be on Insider Access. However, if you don't want to wait around for drafts at all, check out FFPC Player One. Once you register for a Player One draft, you are drafting right away against 11 smart FFPC CPU players, many different profiles, dozens of different profiles. So it's not just based on ADP. You're going to get some crazy tight end people. You'll get some running back stackers. You'll get some zero RB players in there. You never know what's going to happen, but you can win real money on that. Those drafts start at $10. They go up from there. You can win free entries into the main event and the big gorilla. Check out FFPC Player One at myffpc.com right now. You never know. You might like it. Some people were skeptical and then they tried it and now they've done, a couple dozen of them. We're coming up on the end here, Theo. We don't know who your last pick is going to be, but if you were to give your team a letter grade tonight from the one spot, and you can be as harsh as you want or as easy of a grader as you want, where does this team land in as far as a letter grade goes and the potential for this team getting hot and maybe winning the 400K?
I would say it's a B. I need to have some work at running back, and actually, I have Gibbs. So I mean, I think it's a solid B. I think it's not the worst team I built. And I think I have outs. I think I can win this league. I'm going to need Baker Mayfield to run pure. I'm going to need Brock Purdy to run pure. But I think I have enough at the running back 2 position that if Jahmyr Gibbs just stays healthy this year, this team has a lot of juice. I like the way that the wide receiver run out went for me with the BTJ pick, the Stribling pick, the KC Conceepcion pick. So I don't dislike this team. The one is really fun, but then it can get tricky at times, and I think I sort of treaded water in this draft pretty well. I like the Vidal and Tucker and Hurst picks in the back half. Arroyo was the tilting one. Yeah, I mean, Sean, that sort of would make a little sense, but I don't think I'm going to go 2 QB build on this one. I think if I was going to take another quarterback, it would probably be Shedeur Sanders here.
Yeah, the Sean
Watson goes right before me.
Right. Sean Green, our noted 49ers fan, hanging out with us tonight, trying to get to sell you on Mac Jones. It didn't happen. Who is Mr. Irrelevant of this draft going to be, Theo?
The best first name in football. It's Theo Johnson. I'm taking Theo Johnson for my final pick.
We start with Theo Gremminger and we end with Theo Johnson as the final pick tonight. You can compete against Theo and join one of these drafts as well at myffpc.com to get some of the best advice, maybe the best advice in the business. Go to rotowire.com. There you're going to find Theo Gremminger's rankings, his advice, his articles, his podcast. He is the lead NFL fantasy analyst and content director for that website. You can check out his work there as well as the OG Fantasy on X. Theo, this was great, man. Enjoy the rest of drafting season. Thanks so much for drafting with us tonight, and we will see you in Las Vegas, my friend.
Yeah, I can't wait for Vegas. Shout out to everybody in the FFPC chats. I'm going to be drafting pretty much all day Thursday, and I'm in the post-game main event. Varsity in the morning with Andrew Schellenberg and Dan Williamson. Then Dan Williamson and I split a team in the main event. I think we're doing 2 together. Dan's going to do that post-game with me as well. So, yeah, definitely look forward to seeing everybody. Might draft on Friday there as well, still up in the air.
Yeah, we'll see. I will definitely see you in that varsity draft. I think I'm facilitating that one. I usually facilitate that one.
Yeah.
So I will see you there, Theo. And good luck, man, in all your leagues this year. Really appreciate you carving out some time for us.
No, thanks for having me on. And if you guys do want to get access to RotoWire subscription, support the work I'm doing over there, use code Theo20. It's going to get you 20% off of any sub.
That code, once again, THEO, the number 2, the number 0, Theo20 for RotoWire.com's discounted access. For Theo Gremminger, for Dave Terpoilli, for Matt Deutsch, our producer tonight, I'm Eric Balkman. I want to thank each and every one of you for watching, listening, streaming, downloading. Next Thursday night at 7 o'clock, we're going to do this again. We got another FFPC live best ball tournament coverage, this time with Justin Herzig from FF in 60 and Establish the Run. He's going to draft and go for the 400K. Will he do it? I don't know. You can tune in next week at 7 p.m. Eastern time for that. I'm Eric Balkman. This has been FFPC Insider Access live on the Better Sports Network. Talk with you again next week, everybody.